disconnected a second. At least get the audio.
You start the video. Just maximize that. Not that, the other. The other one. That's Teams, we don't want Teams. See, this. Click on that, maximize. And then start video. Here you go.
All right. So, we don't have this, is there acceptable?
No, I'll just call a special meeting of the village board to order at 12:10. 12:09. The camera is in the ceiling there.
No, I meant, like, is there a more accessible, like, light switch to turn it off and on easier?
I don't think so.
No, it's all the way at the end
All
with
right,
all 5 switches. You gotta play which one.
never mind, Carol. So, didn't know if you guys want to sit in the dark the whole time, but.
This is fine. As long as I don't.
Do you
fall
want
asleep.
some light? We could, I might not pull things up on the screen until somebody asks me,
Okay.
right? Somebody wants to look at a specific plan or something that's in a document, then we can pull it up on the screen, but. A lot of these items that are on the agenda are discussion items, primarily meant for dialogue, because I have not been coming to the village board meetings. We're working on a lot of things. And I want to bring everybody up to speed who has not already met with me and asked questions or talked about specific projects.
I'm just gonna turn that out of the way.
So I was going to, perfect, thank you. I was going to attempt to micromanage and identify a number of minutes per item on the agenda, but we're not gonna do that. We're just gonna go through, and if we can wrap things up in an orderly amount of time, like we're not spending an hour on one item, then we should be able to progress through it pretty well. The first item on the agenda is something we've all been talking about. I've been talking with, I think, each and every one of you here about it, the comprehensive plan update. So a little primer, comprehensive plans are required municipal planning documents for local governments. They are typically, and this is not a statute, but they are typically updated on a 10-year window. Every 10 years, a community is updating their comprehensive plan. In short, it's a blueprint for the future, right? We're looking at everything from land use down to the transportation, and in today's world, sustainability, energy, all of these different things that are impacted by the government, both at the public level and the private level. Comprehensive plans are, they're a long process. It can sometimes be a drawn out process, depending who's involved, who's on the committee that's established, et cetera. But this is something I have been telling the village board, since I was hired in 2017, that I would help the village do. I will not write the entire plan. That's not appropriate for the in-house planner to do without a third party. So what we would do, if this board decides that the comprehensive plan update is one of, my projects to work on in 2024, we would start by going after a grant. And one of the things I did send everybody in the email with the items attached was the request for funding application from last year for a new program that's called Smart Growth Community Planning. Literally one of the purposes for this fund source establishment was to fund comprehensive plan updates. And because they want them to be updated with sustainable or smart growth type elements, which we would do anyway at today's point, day and age. I have talked to several of you about doing this next year. I have talked to several of you about applying for the grant. Ray and John will remember from when I was brought on as the planner. You guys will not, because it was before your time. I was originally hired just to do zoning administration. I wear multiple hats at the town, but my 2 main hats are planning and zoning. When I was hired to do zoning here, I was just doing permits, plan reviews, planning board, zoning board, inquiries, things like that. At a point in not too distant future, after I was originally hired in 2017, I was brought on to do the planning work, which is the whole other side of what I do and actually what I went to school for: comprehensive planning, downtown planning, transportation planning, utility planning, capital improvement planning, housing, economic development, the whole gamut. So when I was brought on to do that, in my proposal, you guys probably remember one of the bullet items that I said, let's do this, was a comprehensive plan update. The last update in the village was 2004. So we're at about 20 years now, which is, we're long past due. And I think in the past decade, we have seen enough change, enough new people, new industry, new uses, to provoke the need for an update. And we have new board members, we have new thoughts. And this would be, in my assumption and my world, this would be a perfect time to go after the funding. It's a guarantee. I've already talked to people at the Department of State. This is a guarantee for us just because of how old our comp plan is. The good thing about this grant is it's a 90-10 split. So if we go after 75K or whatever the maximum is, we're paying effectively pennies out of pocket. The money is going to go entirely to a consultant. We would go through an RFP process. I draft the RFPs, no offense. Mayor Blaze used to draft his own RFPs. I draft the planning RFPs. That goes out, it goes through this board, gets published. We get people that submit responses. They're in the form of proposals. We select a couple of you and maybe Carol and one or two other people, form a selection committee. We evaluate, we hire a contractor, then the process starts. We start the public participation process. At the beginning of the process, a comprehensive plan committee is formed, established by the mayor and this board. It will comprise Carol, probably the zoning board chair, and a few other people that are involved in planning, but also important stakeholders in the village. So the process, I mean, that's a short and simple version, right? And the process beyond winning the grant, starting the plan with the consultant, you get through it very quickly in a year. It could be an 18-month, almost a 2-year process by the time we have public meetings. If we're looking at land use and actually planning land use areas, we're going to have charrettes that involve the general public, not just sitting there and listening to us, but writing things on paper, identifying where they want to see certain stuff. So, by the time it's adopted, we may start this in 2024. It could be the end of 2025, early 2026 before it gets adopted and it's our comp plan. So knowing that is ahead, at some point in time, there is a round of CFA applications coming out in May. Every May they open, every July they close. I, in my planning proposal to the village board a couple of years ago, promised a minimum of 2. I have typically done, without the COVID year, I've done 3 every year. I would gladly apply for this application if you guys want me to do that. If we want to do the comp plan, that would certainly be a valuable application for us. But like I said, it's probably a shoo-in. What we would have to do, and this is on your end, work with Danae to get the match and the upfront money budgeted in the next round budget, 24-25. It's a reimbursement grant, just like all the other ones that we do. So you budget for the full amount, and then you budget revenue for what's coming in from the grant. The rest is what we expend out of pocket.
What do they typically cost?
It depends, the answer goes in line with the timeline I gave earlier. If you want to do a short and sweet one for a year, 40 grand, 50 grand. If we want to really spend our time on this and make it as comprehensive as possible, have plenty of public workshops, it could be 75. So, but still, if we can get 90% of that amount, $7,500 for a new blueprint for this village is peanuts.
Yeah.
It's doing the meetings like you did for the DRI. Do we have it at the Carriage House?
Yes, there will be several of those, where people interactively participating. Like I said earlier, if we're doing a land use section, that's actually in the last comp plan, there were actually designs of certain areas, Shepherd Park and areas in the village. Here's what could be here in terms of development or public uses, etc. that adds more time, that adds a charrette, it adds a little more money for the consultant to do, nice fancy drawing type things. But I think 75 would be towards the high end, and we would put that in the RFP, what our assumed maximum expense
Like
is.
not to exceed.
Exactly. So,
We did charrettes back in 2004, and they're much more interactive than what we did at the carriage house this time with the DRI.
Yep.
And it was a good good showing for that.
You guys had a lot of meetings.
Yeah, we did. It
I
was
remember
pretty
outside
drawn
looking
out.
in on that.
it can be drawn out, and if it's not managed properly, it could be an absolute nightmare. I don't know if anyone heard what happened with the town comp plan. Most of that process occurred prior to my arrival, and then when I got there, that was one of my first jobs in 2015, was to wrangle that group right back in, because we had a committee that effectively went rogue. They told the consultants to go F themselves. They scraped everything in the plan that was in relation to land use and zoning. The whole section came out. Which means we now have nothing in the town comp plan to give us insight onto what type of zoning amendments we want to see, what type of land uses we want to see coming in the future. So we're going to be doing ours pretty soon too. It's going to be less than a 10-year cycle on that one. But the more you look and the more granular you look at things, if we look at transportation granularly, even utilities, that will extend the time, because they're going to involve engineers at their firm and not just the planning folks, So I put this first because I've talked, I think, to all of you about this topic. And as I get into December, January, I start identifying grants or projects that you guys would select from, and then you give rankings for me. That's what identifies the 3 that I'll apply for at least. So as we get into the winter, I wanna know what everyone's thinking, if this is a project we're gonna work on next year. If you want me to go after the grant, and I can work with everybody on getting it set up and applying in May.
Still have to think about to what depth we want to go. Like you said, we could do it a year or 2 years, and how much nitty gritty do we need to get into? And also, I think after we did it last time, we rewrote a lot of the zoning after that, based on the new comp plan.
Yeah, so that comes out of it. So you have a whole section in the comprehensive plan typically about land use and zoning. And the uses is more generic. We want to see, we've made a couple amendments to the zoning code over the years where we've added a use, right? We've added certain
We
amusement.
didn't have an industrial, so we added industrial for bottling. I think it was John Carr that had a bottling plant, and we didn't have an industrial use, so we created that.
We've
Was that
had
about 10 years ago?
a while. We've done a
John
couple.
was 20 years ago.
We've done a couple use additions since I've been
Not
here.
Right.
The amusements,
Okay, oh,
Recently
yeah, okay.
was the amusements and also the condos.
condominiums, that was
Condos
added.
this
That
year,
was just
yeah.
this year.
Right.
So that's more generic. These are the types of uses you want to see moving forward, and maybe where. The zoning section actually is specific to, here's where we want to see the code updated. Here's what sections need to be added or removed.
Carol and I have talked about that a lot.
We have, and that's on the agenda as well. Actually briefly discussing some of the codes we've talked about, with a few of you with myself. So that is one of, like I said, it's one of the most integral sections of the comp plan, and the one that the town adopted in 2016, the whole section was removed. So what that means is we have either a potential lawsuit for every single zoning amendment we've made, or we have free reign on any zoning amendments we want to make, because there's nothing in the comp plan that says you can't, right? You can also identify in there what you don't want. So, and there's a good framework. It's actually in the documents I sent you. There's actually an outline of what a typical comp plan contains. Out west, they're called general plans, and they have what are called elements. There's an element on transportation, element on sewer, element on water, element on housing, element on economics. So we'll work with the consultant that we hire to figure out what the framework will be, but the granularity of it has to be identified while I'm writing the RFP.
I would think, I mean, in just my opinion, guys jump in, we would want to do it right. Do it granularly and take the longer route, I would think, in my opinion, because hasn't been done in 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of I read our comprehensive plan, I know Allison did as well, and we both agreed, there's a lot of stuff that's still relevant, concerns that were brought up then that are still relevant.
It's not a
Today.
bad comp plan.
It was a
It's
good,
not
it was
bad one.
pretty
It's just
comprehensive.
It's
You
just
don't
so
know how well it's followed.
it's
Just
just
a little dated, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
nothing, like, I don't wanna say nothing, because that's too objective. Not a lot was addressed that was brought up in that comp plan. So it's just like, yeah, we have this plan. This is where we should focus
Start.
our energy. And none of the energy got focused in those things, like the mixed use, like
Yeah.
it brought up that, you know, you should encourage mixed use, second level
second
housing
story.
and third level.
That's
Um,
all very important stuff that,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard ideas from everybody I've had meetings with. That are perfect things to inject into the comprehensive plan as
Yeah.
strategies. And at the end of the comp plan is a matrix. That has a list of strategies and who's responsible for implementing them and how long. And how's it being paid for? And that's my blueprint.
Yeah.
You know, by the end of the project. I'm not looking in the bells and whistles of the text, I'm looking at the matrix.
Yeah. Well, that dovetails with the workforce housing, I mean, the mixed use.
So Ray, are you saying that this comp plan we have now just needs to be updated rather than a new one?
Well, I
coming
think
in?
there's still a lot of technological advancements that have happened in 20
Make it
years.
relevant.
And there was no technological element of that comp plan, like, I mean.
The internet wasn't even invented then.
Right, the internet was barely a thing.
I mean,
You
the
know?
ways is when you logged in.
Yeah, it was
You've got mail.
33K.
To go on to what Ray said before, you're right, 'cause I poked through. We created a game plan 20 years ago. Then the game began, and they threw the game plan out the window. I'm not putting a fault on anything, but we were saying about to go at the granular level. I think it's smart to go that way. Because going to our second discussion, not to even start it on the consolidation study. Can you honestly sit there and say that you're working on a plan for the next 10+ years, we're gonna give you our best foot forward, but we're gonna rush it through the door.
Right.
For production, especially if you're looking at this comp plan to be our blueprint. We wanna put out there before we enter into the consolidation realm of it. I think the slow and steady is the best, especially if they're 90-10 split. You
That's
know,
good.
I know free money doesn't ever really exist, but 90-10's not bad.
Yeah, the
Not
difference
bad.
is peanuts. If we go for 50 to 75, it's $2,500 difference out of our pocket. It's the real difference is the time. And if we add an extra year, if everybody's okay with that, knowing we'll have a better product, probably this time 2 years from now.
And will they give us regular updates? Because I'm sure
Oh, yeah.
the neighbors ask. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
at Price Chopper yesterday begrudgingly in town. And I say begrudgingly because you can't go to Price Chopper without getting into a 20-minute conversation
Seeing somebody.
about something and I get a phone call, where are you? Because they actually, it was a question about consolidation.
Mhm.
And I started talking about comp plan.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good idea. Will you give us updates? I was like, I think so.
So now, today's day and age, the consultants that we hire, they actually create a website, just like they did for DRI.
Mhm.
There's a website created, every meeting is posted, the minutes and the recordings are posted, the draft documents are posted, we'll have surveys on there. It's a full-fledged thing that we hire these people to do.
I see
Transparency.
stars over your head, Allison, the surveys and it's training for you, I know.
I feel like what I was made for doing things like this. I agree. I think taking the longer route with it and making a very detailed and well done comp plan is important. I also think it's a good time because Warren County's doing theirs. And there's a ton of studies that basically we've just done to give us a lot of good information, so.
Yep.
I wonder, cause when I think about this, I think we're doing the villages comp plan and we're not just. It's not just the village anymore, right? Like everything has changed and we're also interconnected. I don't know, is there a way to also like talk to Warren County about theirs and not like string them together, cause I don't know if that's the possibility, but like,
They build off each other.
okay, that's
So-
what I'm wondering.
The benefit to my role as planner is I'm on that committee. I'm on a lot of committees at the county, but I'm on that committee for the comprehensive plan.
Okay,
So through that and me acting as project manager on our comp plan, there'll be a little bit of, harmony there.
Yeah,
Will we kind of use what they're developing or will they use what we're developing? Not really, but they will inform each other in terms of generality. Like they're looking countywide. We're very specific just to the village, not even to the town, just to the village. So concepts, themes, yes, there will be consistency and probably even some with the town. Before this gets finished, the town will have started theirs.
I think that timing while they're doing them alongside each other because of that, and I focus on a lot of things like technology or where we are now with our thinking. It's a good time to do it. So if the town is gonna do it, the county's doing it, they're on a state level of Governor Hochul is talking about, you know, looking, it's a good time. If we all do it together, we're all gonna kind of end up not in the same place, but with the same results for our time, you
In the
know?
right direction.
Yeah.
So we're already almost at 12:30.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to move on to the next one unless there's any other questions. So it's out, we're not making any decisions here. You guys can make decisions at your meeting in December if you want. It sounds like the comp plan is gonna be a project for us next year.
I agree. I mean,
yeah.
So I will plan to put that in my list of potential projects for funding, and when we go through the ranking evaluation process, you know, make sure you rank that as you see fit.
Mhm.
And I'm glad to be working on that project because it's a long time coming, but it's also, the planning nerd in me, it's a sweet project. It really is a good project. So. Nerd. That is the comp plan, and as we go through some of these items, we can look at the stuff that's further down the list to see if there's enough time, if we can fit it in. If not, we can always do another one of these, or I can come in December and maybe do one or two, but there's a lot of material here and we could probably spend 4 hours on it. Next item on this list is the consolidation study. This is, as Jose said, it's sort of dovetail into the comp plan. This has come up a lot in the last year, primarily because of what happened last fall around the time of the vote with the resolution and the things that were in it. You know, we made a couple of promises to the general public regarding both dollars and doing this consolidation plan. And once the village did that resolution, we immediately passed the same at the town to study consolidation. And I think I want to preface the whole discussion with the fact that these resolutions were specific to studying. It was not a resolution to support consolidation or start the process. It was only to do the analysis, to do the study and attempt to identify if there was anything different in there than what was in the dissolution study. And then at the end of that process, ideally to give the people one last chance to have a vote and identify if it's something that these communities are going to do together. As people have been bringing the topic to me, asking questions, literally subsequently asking about the comp plan, I have been telling, I think, everybody, they're almost opposite studies in terms of the future of this municipality. We would not and should not do them at the same time. There are obviously two options. There's two studies. You do the comp plan first, consolidation last, or vice versa. There are benefits, in my opinion, there are benefits to both options. In the option where you do the comp plan first, if the village does consolidate with the town, then the town has the blueprint that the village created, right? If we do the consolidation study first and the vote goes down like it did with dissolution, then we have a clear path to say, we're done talking about this. We are moving forward with the next blueprint for the village. There's really not a downside to either alternative, but we do need to start to figure out, you know, we've heard everyone wants to do this comp plan next year. What are we doing with this? And if we're not doing this, how are we responding to the few people that are asking?
Right, Chairman.
Go ahead.
And I apologize to Ray, and I know Dan heard me say this ad nauseum. You know, it's there would be a vote. Well, I'll go beyond that. The time we're looking at time, we're looking at possibly 2 years out if we want to get a comp plan done.
Mhm.
If we try to get them both done, it gets drawn out more. We're people that live day to day, it becomes months and years. I don't want to wait 2 years. My kids will be older and I'm gonna enjoy this now. Last time we went to vote on a consolidation study or a consolidation period.
The
The dissolution rather, sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
Some people were upset because they felt that they didn't get correct information. And that really pushed towards fine, and we want to do the study, we want to.
Yeah.
And I understand, I'm a voter here also.
Mhm.
I like the comp plan, because another word for the comp plan, this is our vision, our promise to our next 10 years of where we're gonna be. As a voter, I need to be informed before I vote. The comp plan is the information. This is what I'm voting for. How can I vote on the solution if I don't even know where we're gonna be at,
Or what you're missing.
or what we're missing? That's why I think that, cart before horse, I think the horse is the comp plan. And the cart pulling behind it is our village. This is where we're gonna go. If you decide you wanna get off this cart and go this other route, well, we can, but I think the comp plan, the time we're putting into it and the reason. That's our vision. That's what we're selling. And it's not really so much a sell as this is the way.
Yeah.
Use that term, the way. Well, it really is the way. And I love studies. I love information. I would like to focus all of our energies into the comp plan. Because we have a new mayor, he has his own vision. And I think it's only right, especially for our board also, and the people in this village. This is what Lake George can be. We've all been, since the new elections, been roughly 7 months. We've done a great job in 7 months. I'd like to see what that 2-year comp plan can really do. And when it's time to vote, then we'll have all the information, rather than voting on a feeling and or a lot of misinformation. The comp plan gets rid of misinformation. And I think the transparency where we need to be today and to build public trust, a 2-year comp plan isn't dragging it out. It's literally leaving no stone unturned. And it'll put even more emphasis on the comp plan. And, new families coming to the area. You have a child that's going to be born soon. Isn't it great to know that we have a plan that in 10 years, this is where we're going to be at? This will help new families and new businesses coming in. I have no issue with a consolidation study or so on down the line if they deem it.
Yeah.
But I'm living in this village. My kids are going to school here. I'd like to focus on the future and how we're going to do it, rather than constantly talking about, hey, let's bring it in, let's tear this thing apart. I'm more focused on building. And I think there's a lot of voters and people that believe in that. And again, I apologize, I keep saying it, but I think the comp plan is the way. And it's all the information that we need to give to our voters so they make an informed vote, so no one feels jaded.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have that feeling at the end of the day.
I think that's a really good point. The only thing that I will say is with topics like this, there is always going to be misinformation.
Right.
Even if we go through the process of doing a comp plan, which is not based on factual things or numbers or operations, it's based on vision. Then hypothetically, we do a consolidation study after, and once that's finished, there's a round of misinformation that comes out after, or even during. So it's still gonna be there. And I think part of the things I was saying when we were doing the dissolution study, to those that asked, were, we developed this RFP, we went through this process to hire a consultant who is the best in the business at doing this, in an attempt to mitigate misinformation and people's own, stuff coming out of the woodwork. It didn't. There was still a sizable amount, and I think that some people voted based on that. And that is what it is, and that is in the past. But to your point, putting the vision in front of them gives them something to think about. That's not just numbers, right? Because people are not always numbers. So that's a good point.
With all due respect, you weren't on the board when that resolution was passed. And when Doug came in here yelling about honesty and integrity, he wasn't looking at you.
Oh,
he was looking at me. So I was on the board and we passed that resolution and we broke that promise. And there was false information which affected the vote. And I would just like to set the record straight first and then move forward with the comprehensive plan. That's my perspective. And we all have a vote and you can do as you wish, but I think you all am pretty clear where I stand on that.
And I respect your opinion, John, and I also respect that when you were in the office the other day and said, I'm not gonna stomp my feet and hoot and holler if I don't get my way. I'm just gonna say what I feel, and I respect you for that.
It's business,
Yeah.
and, you know, and I
I
respect
wasn't the
Doug
one
for,
being yelled at though, so I don't feel
Yeah,
like
I
you
res-
feel, so.
I respect Doug for being who he was, and
Absolutely.
I respect, Ed for his, views. So
But
that's
you-
why we have our views and we vote, but
But you have to understand, that's two people. There's 3,500 people in the town and two people have been boisterous about it. Ed being one of them,
Mhm.
and Doug actually has moved on since then, and
He has, and actually, you guys all know Doug works with me. When the topic came up, I asked him. Somebody told me go watch the YouTube video for, I think both of you guys. told me.
yeah,
Yeah,
So I watched it and, you know, some of it, I had my mouth open, some of it I was like laughing a little bit, but. At the end of the day, I said to him, why did you go there? What was your goal? And for him, I think it was the dollars. I think it was the promise to reduce the tax of the same amount that the
Oh,
study
yeah.
had. For Ed, it's the study.
right. But there's also the possibility that through this, consolidation study, there would be savings for both communities. I still think as one Lake George, we'd be stronger down the line because the village depends on revenues heavily. And the town has property taxes that come in and you depend on the village for a lot of your services.
Yeah.
So together, I think it would be better for both, and it certainly would be better for the Caldwell Sewer District because they're gonna get hard with fees. So, you know, nothing personal. Go ahead, do what you like. I would just like a decision.
To set the record straight, you guys have every right to adopt a new resolution amending or rescinding a previous one.
Mhm.
I spoke with Matt about it and he said, you don't have to do
You
anything.
don't even have to.
Mhm.
You know, it was another board, it was, well, three of us were the same,
Mhm.
but. It was a different thinking, we did pass that resolution, I believe, before the vote, and then
Yes.
once the vote came. It was in stark comparison to even thinking about it again, I think everybody's moved on.
I think so. But
I
I don't think it's a terrible idea if you do formally decide to move on. It may not be a bad idea to consider a resolution, only because those few people that have asked continue to reference that document.
So, but then there is the voter initiated option too.
There is always that opportunity,
Right, so
that
that would be-
possibility, and that could occur. We could be in the middle of the comprehensive plan and we could get a petition slapped on our desk.
Right.
We never know.
But that would be two petitions.
For
It's
4
a
years,
It's a singular, well,
For dissolution.
right,
Consolidation's different.
Right.
so-
Be two petitions.
so town signatures and village signatures would be required if somebody was to do one for consolidation, so
Yeah.
it would be. In theory, twice as hard to get that many signatures because you're trying to convince people in the town. Sign this document
to take our debt,
before we do the study,
That's what I'm wondering about.
but that
we
won't,
keep our debt,
correct.
So it doesn't, cause.
The village debt has to
Exactly.
stay with the
we
village,
keep our debt forever until it's paid off.
but some of the misinformation out there.
Carol, you
there
had
was
something?
Well, a
Lines of,
couple of things, yes, we do keep her that, and that was a huge portion of the misinformation that was out there. Everyone thought that our debt was going to go away, I'm not sure how that information got out there, but, I know it was out there, many people said it to me. I'm just thinking about further down the road and doing the, comprehensive plan or doing the, consolidation. It might be a good idea to do a resolution, one, because people will know what direction we're headed in.
Yeah.
And two, and this is more of a question, what happens to our funding? So let's say we've got both balls in the air. But someone is looking at a grant giving us a grant for the comprehensive plan, and all of a sudden, do you know those guys are looking at doing a consolidation as well, and they haven't really made a decision? I'm just wondering, you know, I know we've run into this in the past where, you know, funding becomes,
It could impact it.
That's okay.
You know, they typically don't take into account the tertiary stuff. When we go for funding, they have the application and any documents we submit with it, and that's what the reviewers are reviewing. There's always some stuff in people's ears, you know, even the governor can get in somebody's ear and say, give that one 100, we're funding it, you know, it could be the crappiest application, it's getting money. So it could be, but I wouldn't really be worried about, I do though agree that a resolution would chart the path, and it would clearly identify, here's what we're doing, here's why we're supporting it, or when, and at the point in time where we go for a grant, I need a resolution anyway.
Yeah.
Actually approving that I'm submitting for it and the village board supporting the project.
and it would give us some good press too, if we did the resolution either way, that it looks like the decision has been made.
Yeah, we're not waffling any longer.
Right, don't have your foot in two different,
Right.
both sides of the river here, you know?
This 90-10 grant,
Yes,
now is that like, is that guaranteed to stay? If we were to go ahead with the consolidation study and then in 2 years, would that still be there? Or is that kind of like, we have no idea, it's here now? Cause I'm
us winning it or it being available.
being available, cause I'm thinking more of money wise, like if this is so cheap for us to do now.
Yeah.
And then we go ahead and do a different study. So then down the road in like 2 years, and we're like, okay, now we need to do a comp plan. Are we putting ourselves in a bad position of like, now we have to pay for the whole thing?
I think the smart growth money will be there.
Yeah.
It's a new funding source. It was only created 2 years ago. It's being used very widely across the state for comp plans, so I don't know that it'll go anywhere.
Okay.
The money for the consolidation study is not going anywhere. That program is well established and it's been funded every single year. The difference there is that's a 50-50,
Mhm.
similar to the dissolution one. The study will probably be less if we do a consolidation study, because they would use, the consultant would use the dissolution study as framework.
Mm.
And there's, you know, some things that go into it that change. The process is a little different. But some of the information in there is gonna be the same, all the analysis of existing conditions and things like that. The budgets, that will be updated, because by the time we maybe do that study, there'll be new budget numbers and things like that. But the end result, and I've mentioned this to a few of you before, the end result of consolidation is no different than dissolution. It is the same end result. It is the process to get there that's different. And I said this, I forgot who I said it to the other day. The process to get there is even a little less different with us, because the town was involved in the dissolution study. In most cases, the town is not. It's that, you know, in most cases where this occurs, the town and the village are not, you know, happily holding hands, skipping down the street together, which is what that's kind of how we are, the town and the village. We're a very strong set of municipalities in terms of shared services. Some towns and villages do not like each other at all, and if a village looks at dissolving, they don't involve the town. Consolidation is meant purposefully to involve both bodies. So in that regard, it will be even a little less different because the town was involved
Yeah.
to begin with. It's not like we wouldn't be involved. So it's a little more of hand holding, right? The process is the town gets a say and everybody has to come to a consensus on things and how it will work, but the end result is the same.
It's real quick, I'm just gonna give some credit to John here. John takes a hard stand when he feels it's right, and he doesn't waver from it. And I just wanted on the record to say this, that it's not easy to go in there and say something quote unquote unpopular, because I get where you're coming from. You're absolutely correct on your views there. My push behind the comp plan, like I said, where we're out of date, the idea of being, use the Lake reference of being rudderless for another couple of years really does scare me, because at the end of the day, I don't just want to be stagnant. I want to keep pushing it forward, and I see that this world is changing very quickly. Our community is changing very fast. And 2 years, I know for a lot of people, it's a hard pill to swallow. I know we'll get it right. They'll give us a plan, move forward. Consolidation, you know, we all have our views on it, and I get the financial impact of it. I really do. I see that shared services, the people, the numbers, bring taxes down, so on. I just want to say for that, we're a village, and we have the town. The way I look at the word village for me is we're gatekeepers of this lake. It's a special feeling that when you're a resident of this village, you're a gatekeeper. The town of Lake George doesn't touch this lake. We are the lake, we are the hub. And the spokes on our wheel that create the Warren County all begin here in the village with us. And I know consolidation study is important because even though I have my feelings, it's also important for me to remember that there's another side. You look at the financial side where John sits, and we have to respect that. So I do believe the comp plan should go forward first, but I do think that John's right. That a consolidation study is probably something to have, because as much as I say you need to see the whole thing before you vote, the consolidation study would also be, you know, another part of that pie on there. So I'm not shooting you down at all when it comes to consolidation study. I'm just saying that the longer we wait, we have a boat out there and the storms are rocking it. And we're gonna need a direction. And that's why the comp plan direction, I think it's good. Is there any way in the comp plan? I know this is taking time. Is there any way in the comp plan to the mention or mention verbiage or chapters on consolidation on there, or would that be counterproductive?
You could put it in there in terms of, you know, a general theme, right? There will probably be something in there about the fact that we study dissolution and the mere fact that we share so many services and we build off each other for stuff. You could put in there something like, you know, at the point in time that the village board feels it appropriate to study consolidation, then they could and should and would, but you don't have to put any of that in the comp plan. Is it counterproductive? No, not unless you have a strategy. If you have a strategy in there that says complete a dissolution, a consolidation study, we have to do it. So you could put it in as a theme, as something that's mentioned. Maybe there's a section on government structure or something like that, but you know, I wouldn't put it in the end in that matrix unless it is something you are all 110% on doing. So.
May I just respond to Jose quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for your recognition that I stick by my guns, but I am concerned about the financial future. Because we are so reliant, like I said, we're so reliant on revenues. And if people run, if our demographic doesn't have the disposable income to come here, like they have in years past, we don't have that luxury of falling back on property tax revenue like the town does. And the major expense that keeps Allison up at night, which is the WWTP, how do we distribute that burden? And the people over in the Caldwell Sewer District are going to get crushed.
Well, in response to you, we went through COVID unharmed. I mean, it's not like our industry is fragile, John. It's not. We've gone through recessions. We've gone through the Great Recession, most recently in 2008, just fine.
But I also look at
It's not all doom and gloom out there.
okay, well,
Okay, can we move on to workforce
Sure.
housing now? We've done an hour now and we haven't even covered 2 topics out of 9.
I think the workforce housing thing is important to talk about because I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but I think the workforce housing study does kind of touch on a little bit. That like we do need some change a little bit if you want to continue with the industry that we have, and it does. Yeah, times are changing, so I would say let's move on to the workforce housing study because I think it makes a difference on the consolidation study. I don't know if we're all gonna be able to make this decision today. I feel like it needs more like information, more chats. And I think we just want to do what's best for the village residents. I think everyone does.
Sure, and we're not making any decisions today. This is just
Yeah.
discussions.
But-
Because Joe can't be here because we had to move the meeting from Monday, so. It's not fair to him if we were to vote on anything, so.
Yeah.
All right, so the housing market study. This is a project that was born out of the need to address, this is just the RFP for it, sorry.
Oh, you only put that in?
Should have turned it. It's bright. So the study was born out of the need to try and find more housing for the J1s. That was the primary reason that we went into the study. Once we finished the study, we really found out that wasn't the only underlying reason that we needed to analyze this. And it's titled Workforce Housing Market Study, but we do actually look at all types of housing. We do look at not just the seasonal workforce, the J1s and the H2Bs, but we look at the local workforce in this study. We look at people that are possibly displaced by costs. So we looked at, and I'm not going to go into detail. This thing is 120 pages long. I have sent it to you. It was on the email that I sent out. It was one of the ones that made it through because it's a smaller size. But again, at the end of the study is a matrix with recommendations. And some of the recommendations are pretty easy. They are things that we've already talked about or are starting to work on. Creating a rental registry and inspection program. We've already inspected properties for years that are being used for J1s. We work with the county to inspect them primarily for safety and fire concern and then overcrowding. We want to, per this strategy, develop a more formal registry and inspection program that Jim will now help with. Assemble an inventory of housing opportunity sites. We've always got people asking us, you know, we know where some housing is. We can find out where there's more housing, but where is there opportunity? Where is there to actually possibly develop, retrofit, reuse? Where are there places in the village or the town that could be opportunities to house more people, not just the workforce, but just house people in general? And then there are some more big picture items, like establishing a dedicated fund for housing, establishing an authority or an actual entity that can help with housing efforts or housing projects. And number one, this was, I think, put there in terms of priority, to pursue a seasonal housing project through a public-private partnership. This is something we've been working on. This was actually the impetus for the study because we started looking at a company who could come here and do a project. And they asked a bunch of questions. What are your needs? What are your sites? What are your available entities that can help us? That is what created the mindset that we needed to do this study. And they have since been brought back into the fold, have told us how important and helpful this document is to them to identify the needs, the bed counts, all of that stuff. And so we're back into discussions with International Residence Hall. If anyone didn't know who it was, we were talking 2 years ago. They're actually here. They're coming here today.
And we're gonna meet them
We're
tomorrow.
meeting with them tomorrow for a couple hours to look at the Harbor Hotel site. That is hopefully number one, could be a seasonal workforce housing project with them at that property, which would not just be for the J1s and the H2Bs, but in the off season for everyone that's, you know, anywhere from I'm working at Winter Realm and Winter Dream to I work up at Gore Mountain, or I'm a traveling nurse at Glens Falls Hospital. Through this project, we met with all those stakeholders and we talked with everyone and we identified their needs. And we are pretty positive a facility such as this would be used on a year-round basis and probably have relatively low vacancy rate. They need some level of vacancy, but that is something that they figure out on their own. So this is just one portion, though, of this study. The project is one strategy. A housing fund is another strategy. A housing authority is another strategy. Ray and I have plans to go talk with John Taflin at the county administrator, to put that bug in their ear, because it's really the county that should have the housing authority and the housing fund. Those are typically done at a county level, and the need, this study clearly says it, the need is not just in Lake George. And I think everybody knows that. The need is everywhere, but it is pretty strong throughout the county, and that had been already identified in the county's housing study, which finished right around the same time that this one did. And so there are not, an endless amount of strategies. I think there's 8. And they are things that we've either already started working on, or we're planning to put our minds and strengths behind over the next year or two. Trying to get the responsible entities, which are identified in one of the columns, to work on these things, and attempt to make progress on them. One is zoning. We talked about this before. The town has already adopted zoning regulations that help to entice housing development. I think the condo law we just did this year helps to do that. Maybe it's not specific to the demographic we're looking at in this study, because typically condo owners are wealthy or second homeowners, and they're not, the regular workforce. But there are ways that we can jump into the zoning code and attempt to entice, whether it's through accessory dwelling units or increased density with sustainable provisions, i.e. somebody installs low impact development stormwater and they get a little bit of a density bonus, something like that. So that's the zoning one. And then the last one, which is one of the most important ones, is planning for transportation linkages. This was the one thing that we heard consistently from every single employer we talked to. A lot of these kids, or even the H-2Bs, are only using bikes. Most of them don't drive. Most of them don't have cars. Most of them don't even particularly like, walking on the sidewalk. So they try to find a job near where they're living. And that is a limiting factor to our workforce. Just because people can't get here, they're not taking jobs here. So aside from housing, transportation was also a major need that was identified in the study. And I think over the next couple of years, we'll be sort of, bidding and piecing implementation of some of these strategies. And you'll hear me come back, maybe it's next year, maybe it's the year after, when the comp plan is done. I'll be back to do some zoning updates with you guys. I think at some point in the future, this thing at the county, if it pans out, we'll be back, because the village and town are going to have to be partners and contributors into this authority. And then the last one, I didn't even go over it, but number 2 is expanding upon existing partnerships focused on seasonal housing needs. Keyword being expand. We already have these partnerships. Student Connection being one that's integral actually to the partnerships with the business community. And so expanding upon what we're already doing, trying to strengthen it, making it more formal, like the Student Connection has gotten. We're getting closer to where we need to be. But at the end of the day, the sole goal is to try and get more housing units. And even through the comp plan, we can try to identify what that looks like, where, how, who.
Yeah. I think this really goes well hand in hand with the Warren County housing. And I think the thing that's like coming out to me is, here we're focusing on seasonal, and then Warren County, their study is really focusing on how there is no supply of housing for young families or households that are like under 150% of the area median income.
Yep.
Right. And so those are the people that are usually your workforce in this area. There's something to be for seasonality, but then I also wonder, by doing things like this, are we continuing to promote more seasonality, right? Because if we're not having enough families coming in, the other people that work these seasonal jobs are high school students, college students. if we're not having high school and college students live in this area, we can probably say that they're not going to be people that can actually work these jobs. So we're kind of like are depleting our workforce of certain types of jobs in that respect. So like I would like us to focus on both, not just J1. We should also be focusing on creating affordable housing for young families, for one person households or younger. We don't have anything like that.
We don't.
And I just think it's so important. They have a whole bunch of things in here. And you were right saying like, I think Warren County is the one that needs to maybe help us out with this. One of their suggestions was using money from the short-term rentals to push.
Idea.
Thank you then. That was a great idea. And I
That's
really,
why I made it into the study.
it's really important in my mind, and I'm just throwing this out there. I would love if we could talk to Warren County. Maybe they're already thinking about it, but we solely use occupancy tax really now to improve tourism. So you're kind of just like pushing the same thing. Are you going to kill your industry because you're only putting money into that? And we're not putting money into people that live here that can work those jobs. Like, I feel like we should be pushing for a huge part of that money to go towards funds for people to afford homes in this area. I mean, there was just something that went up on the market the other day for, I think, like 400,000.
430,000 right
400
over here.
That's not possible.
Yeah,
Or-
Woodstone or something.
It
I agree.
needs, that's my biggest thing. So
So
I would like us to focus on that. As
I
well.
agree entirely, and I
Yeah.
think that only number one is specific to workforce housing.
Right.
The project itself is a workforce housing project, but expanding upon partnerships, creating a fund, creating an authority, none of them are specific to workforce. They would be general housing things.
Yeah.
Even the opportunity sites, identifying sites for opportunity for housing, it's not specific to workforce. So that's, like I said at the beginning, it started off as that,
Yeah.
and it ended as something bigger.
Right.
And I almost asked them to take workforce out of the title.
We talked about having them remove workforce.
But we didn't, because that was
That's how
the,
that's how we
that
got it
was-
paid for.
yes, that was the impetus of the actual study.
Yeah.
And I was happy that the result included much more than that. And it identified things like the economic gap and the housing burden.
Yeah.
That is not something that's actually, you can't analyze that for a J1.
Yeah.
You can't.
No.
That's based on people that live here and their average median income, as well as what they're paying for rent or for mortgage.
Yeah.
So it did look at the bigger picture in terms of affordability and availability. And we do say workforce in a couple of these strategies, but all of them, adopting zoning regulations that give a density bonus. We're not gonna get people that are like IRH using that. We're gonna get, the Schemmerhorns of the world or the Sun Valley. The Sun Valley Apartments across from the Elm School. They were the first to utilize our double density provision by putting in enhanced stormwater, connecting the public water and sewer, going after the LID certification from the waterkeeper. There will be a few workforce in there. Most of them will be young families, people that have a kid in the school district. They may even get a couple of elderly people that want an apartment and try to age in place. The good thing about that one is, when these people try to use those bonuses or benefits, they went to the IDA, they got a tax abatement.
Mhm.
So they're rent controlled for 10 years. They cannot increase their rent over there for 10 years. Things like that, we can do that at the local level. We
Okay.
can include provisions like that in our village ordinance, and when the planning board reviews these things, conditions of approval can stipulate. So I think in the implementation side, it will not be specific to workforce.
I agree. We can't not say workforce enough, but it's, at the end of the study, we did a lot of meetings on this study.
Yeah.
At the end of it, it was completely different than when it started. When it started, we were really focused solely on J1 and H2.
And almost
what
focused
to
just
do
on the
with them.
project.
Yeah. And then we learned so much more. I mean, the housing study is duplicated throughout the Northeast. throughout our entire region. It's not, we're not alone in this.
No.
It's systemic to the area. It's also systemic to the stigma that's placed upon renting. There's the American dream of home ownership. And that's been pounded in our chests for many, many years, when if I had it to do over again, I'd be renting.
Yeah.
I think about it every time I mow my damn lawn.
Well, they- the
Wait to get to be my age.
So Warren County Housing Study specifically touches on that and how rent is no longer even feasible for young families.
That's
gone
in there
up.
too.
It's in our study.
So that's what, like, I get what you're saying. Can people afford rent anymore to live in this area?
So I like the, what Dan was saying about with Sun Valley across the street from,
Yeah.
how we have rent control. People, I tell you from the capitalist side of here, rent control, no, they don't want to make money. But on the flip side, we're gonna give these tax abatements and provisions to work with you. You know, I texted Dan that it all started the chain with Allison. Read this. I was actually in bed and I read through it. And I kept coming back to that one image that I sent Dan today about the middle housing. Cause I always thought of housing
Okay,
as a
mixed use.
single, yeah, the single family. And where my grandmother lives, a condo in Tampa Bay kind of housing. And this idea of the mixed use, I've seen it every day when I lived in Saratoga. That's how Saratoga really built up. They had a inflection point and they needed to create housing with business. And now we started popping up that mixed use.
That was one of the recommendations from the first study that's 20 years old, is more mixed use.
Yeah.
Second
And we
story
can look at
dwelling.
that, provoking or encouraging people who have single story buildings to build a second story for housing units. And maybe there's some bonus or relief or something that's given to them. There's ways to encourage. But the things that were put in the strategies are more operational.
Mhm.
You know, if the county establishes a housing authority, which many counties have, Warren never really had one, but they used to have staff at the county in the planning department that focused on housing. That administered all the CDBG grants and went after the HCR money. They don't have it anymore. And so
Just
getting,
Ethan Gaddy and
it used to be Pat Tadich.
Yeah, Pat
She was the
Tadich,
housing guru there. But when she retired, it kind of fizzled out and they stopped focusing on it, and it's still a need. It's actually now more a need than it ever was.
there's an appetite for it too. So just not to
There is.
step on Dan, but we, as a joint force, I reached out to John Tafflin in the county. There is a huge appetite for them to create a housing study, to actually even partner with us, being the town and village,
Mhm.
in the Harbor Motel project.
Right.
Which it does a lot more than just house J1s. It's beneficial to the community. They have one, they want us to go to Tennessee. They have a plane, they want to fly us there, which is kind of hysterical to me, because why would they want to fly us there? But they want us to see Pigeon Forge, where they built the housing thing outside of Dollywood.
Mhm.
And they said it really works. There's what's the other community?
Wisconsin Dells has
Wisconsin
one.
Dells was the other one, Silver City.
I don't know.
Silver City, I think, is in Colorado, and because of this housing project,
Oh, yeah, near the ski mountains. Yes.
they're gonna be a year-round, they're gonna be a year-round community
You want-
in like 2 years, because of the amount of people that are living there. Sure.
As we go forward with this, and I have a great appreciation for that housing, but, let's not forget transportation. The
Yeah.
Village of Lake George doesn't have, outside of the trolleys, the apartments over by the elementary school are great. There's no other means of transportation unless you have a car.
Mhm.
So I think they need to be coupled together, because it's great to have housing, but if people can't get around, they still can't get around, they're not gonna look at this community to either have their small families or to house students, if a student or whomever has a job in Glens Falls but can't get from here to there.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, it becomes an issue. So you can build the houses and you can build the housing, but it has to be coupled with transportation.
And you're right, like that's what the Warren County Housing Study talked about, was just how much people cross over between counties, between just Warren County. And that's why, like, I feel like with this, I don't know, I'm not sure what I'm getting at is, but I wanna figure out a way to work really with Warren County to create that type of housing to improve our industry here. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does,
Okay,
it does.
It's like
Yeah.
she's 100% right, yeah.
Yeah, and the study that, actually the conceptual design that Holtz, submitted to us has a bus stop incorporated into
Sure.
the design right in front of the
Which we'll hopefully pay for with DRI money if we get
Right.
that CVTA.
CDPN.
Yes. That's one of the partner
That's one of
projects.
the-
Well, if we get to DRI today, we can talk quickly about that, but. We are planning to create a partnership with them that we did not really have with GGFT. And it's beyond their partnership with the Glens Falls Transportation Council. We need to partner with them at the Lake George level.
Yeah.
We want more bus shelters, we need more stops, we even put in DRI the circulator trolley. And it would help move people in and out of the village, and it would help move workforce to where they have to go. I do want to move on. It's about 1:15. I want to keep going, but I would encourage everyone. I sent you all this study. I know it's long, but everything we've been talking about, all the points that Allison said that are in the county study, they are also in here, and we actually have more analytical data in here that I think is helpful to us. In this report, we have an entire section on the affordability gap. We talk about what's affordable, what's not affordable, and we even go into versus income levels, right? What's the housing burden? If you are paying more than 30% of your annual income, that's considered a cost burden situation. You are paying too much for housing already. And furthermore, because this is a workforce study, we have a whole section in here on the economic impact of the housing that exists and the potential economic impact of new housing for the workforce. So we go into detail on trying to understand this J1 program, this H2B program, all these people that come here and either create these jobs or take these jobs. Here's their economic output. Here is the economic output that you're missing by not having enough housing. And that is a critical section of this report because it identifies the gap in what we could have, not just in housing unit count, but in economic output. So I would suggest take a little time, go through this, look at the analysis in some of these sections, and then focus on the stuff at the end. And if anyone wants to be involved in some of the strategy and implementation, let me know, and we'll plug you in where we need the help.
Can I ask you one quick question on this?
Sure.
I think I had seen something in there that said J1 before COVID was at
Yeah.
like high. COVID had obviously no one came, but after it's been significantly lower. Do we know what is driving that? Like why that's lower?
So some of it is just post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the countries have not fully opened up their visa programs. Some of it is because of the new rules. I'm trying to find it while I'm talking. That's it.
Yeah.
And the war in Ukraine is affecting it as
The
well.
war has affected this year and 2022. The changes to the visa program from some of the countries, a lot of the countries used to just send the kids here and they found housing when they got here.
Right.
Now, a lot of the countries actually require them to have a guaranteed housing unit before they get on a plane and come here. And because of the lack of housing, there have been many students who have not been able to come here because they did not find a guaranteed housing unit.
So we feel that that's part of the decline.
Yes.
of the student.
And it's also part of the reason for the slow trajectory back up. I mean, naturally, if COVID is gone and everything is back to the prior state, we jump back up to 1,200 or whatever the number was.
Mhm.
But it has been a relatively slow climb back up, but we're getting back there, This was tough this year.
Yeah.
21 was tough and places were, this is one of the things we went into the study. You got restaurants on the main drag in the middle of summer that are closed on Wednesday and Thursday. That is something that could be addressed by housing more people and allowing more workers here. Then these places have more staff and they can be open. And that dovetails into the economic output. So our hope is that the 2023 numbers are back up to 1,000. will they be? We don't really know yet, but. What's actually also interesting about the J1 is more and more, we heard this in our interviews. More and more companies are taking the H2Bs. The more and more businesses are going with the H2Bs as opposed to the J1s. They're more seasoned workforce. They're here for a little longer. They work a little harder, right? And they're here. The purpose of the H2B program is to come here and work and make money. The underlying purpose of the J1 program is experience, is to get these kids out of their countries and experience another, and while they're here, they're supposed to work. But there was some of the larger employers we talked to, they're looking at almost fully changing. And I think that might change the J1 numbers a little bit. But there's a lot of good data in here, month to month fluctuation. Camoin did a phenomenal job. And the report, they were the highest bidder, if everyone remembers when we selected, the report was worth every cent we spent on it. And I think it's been helpful to others. It even helped the county with some of the stuff they put in their study. But primarily, it's most recently been helpful for Holtz to understand how many units they're supposed to put in a project they want to bring here. All right, so that's workforce housing. Bid, do you want to do this? You want to do this today, or do you want
That's
to?
what I was asking you, if everyone's okay with it. We're running short on time and this is something that we can do later.
And
I
it's a
think that the
long
water
discussion.
study is more important in town sewer.
Okay. So we'll table the business improvement district discussion, and if you guys want to do it in December at the meeting, let me know. If you want to have another one of these, maybe after the holidays, we can do that. And cover any stuff we missed or any new stuff you want me to go over. But I do think that one could be a whole special meeting in itself, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we could do this, once a month or every other month
Yeah, we can do this.
to really,
It'd be tough at a monthly meeting to do everything on top of that.
right, I'm trying to block it,
Yeah, I hear you.
the sun from
Yeah.
hitting my eyes, but I think this is very productive, and if you guys agree, we can schedule it bi-monthly maybe.
I'm okay with that.
I'm happy. monthly.
Yeah,
Well, monthly, we got a monthly meeting.
I know
already.
but at a monthly meeting, that's mostly procedural things. There's not a lot of discussion going
Mhm.
on.
I'm not gonna tie us down to every month, but, I'll at least agree,
As long as if it's during the workday, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's in the afternoon or after business hours, I would prefer it be at your monthly meeting so that I don't have, you guys all know I work for both municipalities, so I have 2 planning boards, 2 zoning boards, and then town board, and if I was coming to village, that's 6 every month.
Sit down on the couch.
Yeah, she's ready to throttle me, so if I could minimize the meetings.
That's why I suggested 3:30 on Mondays, because Joe's up. You're usually out of work by then. Well, you'll be on maternity leave soon, but, you're usually out of work by then, right? You
Yeah,
can-
3 o'clock.
Three,
I
yeah.
might get here like at 3:35.
Sure, no, that's fine. It's just,
That would
it's a time when we can all meet, because I
Yeah.
feel bad that, the deputy mayor can't be here, when he originally would have been able to, but, schedule changed, so. But I don't want that to be a
3:30 works.
tripping point for us.
Could do that. Yeah, I'm, whatever you guys.
That way you're
wanna do,
still
I'm
here, you got another hour of your
I'm here,
day.
and I can hang till 5, that's not a big deal, but it's 5 or 6 nights a month, I'm getting home at 8 o'clock, that's you know how that goes.
I do all too well.
Yeah.
I would be mad.
So, all right, the next item up
Do
here,
we need this projector any longer?
if anyone wants to look at the studies, anyone want to actually look at any of the pages in the studies, the water and sewer studies I did send you guys. I don't think any of you got any of them because your digital towpath kicks back anything that's over 20 meg.
Yeah, we're working on that. That's gonna be discussed at our next monthly meeting. We gotta change our email system to something post 2000.
Gmail will go up to 25 megs.
That's right, you had suggested that he send it to your Gmail account, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was okay or not.
I
I
mean,
can send it
it's
to your private account.
fine.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
Just let me, if anyone wants them emailed, send me your private accounts and I'll try to send them that way. Gmail will only go up to 25. That was one of the reasons we actually changed that to Outlook here. I don't know if there's a maximum, but I've been getting things that are 30, 35 megs in my email here with Outlook, so. If I can send you them some other way, let me know and I will. They're all quite long documents. They all have a plethora of oversized maps.
Can they just be posted on the website? Because
Yes, I
then you
have
can
to
just
do-
click, we could just click links on the website and
Yeah.
then and take.
Website updates are next week in my calendar, I think.
You need a pen? Oh,
Oh, something like
I
that.
feel like that would help a lot with that. And then if you're like on the website, you could just
Look at it.
download it. and
Yeah,
go
we,
to
we,
your-
we can put links to the studies on our. website.
The two,
Could've warned
wow.
the two sewer studies will be on the website next
Oh.
week.
Did I
The
miss
town-
anything?
Water, anybody want anything from upstairs? Cup of water or something?
The town water
Popcorn?
study, the town water study will be on the town website next week as well, once I get to those updates. I can put the village one on the town's website, but that should probably go on the village website if we can get Mathis to do it. I don't feel the need to talk about one of the sewer studies, the one the town did based on flow monitoring. I don't think it's necessarily relevant to the village. All we did, and just as a synopsis, we put a couple flow meters in one of the manholes over near Million Dollar Beach because we wanted to analyze how much flow was going into our lower pump station on Beach Road and to see how much capacity was left. Because we've got all these projects coming up on Bloody Pond and in that area, they're all using that sub sewer shed. They're all using those lines. So we did flow monitoring. We did 2 months in the end of the spring, early summer. Long story short, we have pretty good capacity in that section of Caldwell Sewer. The only thing that was, and it's not even really close, but it's a little over 50%, was the 14-inch line once the two trunks converge and they go underneath the parking lot over there.
At the Million Dollar Beach.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
right.
14-incher is like 50, I think it was at like 56%. So it's.
I think a lot of that's cyanide.
It is a large percentage, and that was actually the crux. The main theme of the study for flow monitoring was you guys have a lot of INI. And one of the glaring things that helped us figure that out was our highest flow day in the 2 months that we recorded was not in the middle of June. It was not in Memorial Day weekend. It was this day in April that we got like 2 inches of rain.
events.
Rain events, yeah.
Can we
So-
get, what's INI?
Oh,
INI is-
inflow and infiltration.
Okay, that's-
So infiltration is what leaks into a sewer pipe. Inflow is actually directly poured into. So infiltration is like a crack pipe.
Yeah.
That's the.
Crack pipe.
No, crack pipe. Whereas the groundwater will seep into it, which it doesn't belong in there.
Okay.
Right.
That's the big part of wastewater is I.
And it's an unfortunate part that we all have to deal with. Every community has a certain amount. It's tough because it's hard to find unless you camera every single line you have, which we did.
Mhm.
And we did a bunch of slip lining, which is a cured pipe liner that goes inside of a pipe and it seals all the holes and cracks, etc. Once you plug a hole, one opens up somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
So we minimized some of the INI over the years. It's kind of back up, and with the years of high rainfall we've been having and the snow melt, it's just the spring kills us every single time in Caldwell Sewer. And a little bit in the village, but not anywhere near what we have. And we're still trying to work on it, but you know, the theme of that study was we have capacity left for the development that's going on in the town. Which was good for us to find out. And we may have our engineer Sean do some more flow monitoring next year, but we're not sure yet about that. The other one I do want to talk about, that's sewer. Well, we're kind of skipping here because water is first, but we just talked sewer. So I'm gonna keep going with that and then we'll go back to water. The town did we're still working on a sewer report, a feasibility study to analyze the potential of putting a sewer district up Lakeshore Drive. This has been looked at. for decades. I think
So 50 years.
the last time it was analyzed in depth was in the eighties. There was a plan developed, there was a potential, cost proposal developed. And I think they stopped just short of applying for grants because the cost was just vast. It was a very high amount of money. Consequently, in early 2000s, there was a follow-up study done that analyzed the possibility of a similar setup, but it wasn't for sewer, it was for water. It was creating a large water district going up Lake Shore. We just found this like last week, I think Ben found it for me.
Yeah.
That will tie into the water study we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the sewer study we're finishing up, it should be done at the end of this calendar year. The reason we're doing that and the reason we were given the money to do that, it's a state grant funded project. DEC has a 4-inch line that comes from Hearthstone Campground. It comes all the way down. It connects to the village sewer at the English Brook crossing. They have had years of issues with that line, and they want to not have issues with that anymore. So they've offered to give it to the town. Dennis bartered, I think over a year ago now, bartered with them and said, we will take your line. We will use it to create a sewer district, but you will give us a bunch of money to help pay for that district. Unofficially, they said, sure. So we went after this grant for 30 grand just to do the feasibility study to analyze if it's possible. Is it possible? Anyone can think up something, but is it a feasibility? Is it cost effective? Is it something that can even happen? So we hired Labella, which was our sole engineer at the time. We now have a couple others over at the town. Long story short, again, I'll try to get you guys the study if you want to see it. It's another 100-pager. But it identifies a boundary in which there can be a sewer district, and it includes everything from the municipal divide, English Brook, all the way up to Hearthstone Campground, all the properties on the east side of Lakeshore Drive, so between the water and Lakeshore Drive, and a sizable amount of properties to the west of Lakeshore Drive. Anything that's directly adjacent to the road can just connect via gravity, right? It's uphill. We also identified the entire neighborhood of Lakeview Circle because that whole neighborhood has roads, public roads in it that we could create a sewer main to connect to the main trunk line on Lakeshore Drive. It's not all, hearts and rainbows. It's an extremely expensive project. There will be limitations. The town will need to have a pump station, probably at the bottom of Morris Lane, if anybody knows where that road is. There will be a sizable mix of both gravity and pressure lines, force mains, both a high pressure force main on Lakeshore Drive and low pressure lines pumping up to the force main from the lakeside, because you have to pump up to get up to the road, obviously, from down near the water. So there's a lot of policy involved. There's a lot of politics involved. There is a lot of financing involved. The quote for the district in the study is $12 million. It will probably be closer to 15 by the time we can even do it. Will the state give us $10 million, $12 million, $8 million? We don't really know yet. We don't know how much they're going to give us. We're going to start going after grant money to make sure we get something, because without assistance, we're not doing it. We cannot put that much money on the backs of taxpayers. What we can easily do is, if we get 50% or more of it financed, just the assessed value that could be in the district would really make it a feasible cost benefit wise. The kicker we're having right now, beyond the town forming the district, beyond where it will be, who will be served, how much they'll pay, probably the linchpin is what this will do to the village system. There is capacity at the treatment plant, the new treatment plant. There is probably not capacity in the line that it would connect to that goes underneath the hotels down by the water.
To the pump station.
Correct. And there is probably not capacity at the pump station.
Right.
So what it would provoke is either a multi-million-dollar project, right sizing the line, which would be near impossible because it's under buildings,
Right.
Or a multi-million dollar project running a new separate line down Canada Street or close to it. That would either connect to the pump station with an improvement. Or that could possibly connect if the flow capacity is there. Right to the force main on, up at the road.
I thought there was an option to go like up and around like that.
We've
Skylar
heard that
Heights, yeah.
option, to go out by the Northway
Yeah.
and shoot down,
Yeah, is that
the.
another headache, but they're all,
It would be the northbound lane, alongside of the northbound lane, and that involves the state. Allowing,
DOT, we unofficially, we were told that's never gonna happen
Yeah.
by DOT.
but that was definitely a scenario, because I remember it being discussed that way
Yeah.
too.
And it maybe could have been just to connect direct up there. But we do think that the force main has a little capacity left. And if we can attempt to bypass the pump station in Shepherd's, then it may mitigate a lot of the concern that we in the state currently have about turning a $15 million project into a $20 million project. We're also concerned, we had a good visit with Tim at the pump station. We're concerned about real estate. I don't even know that there's a lot of room to upgrade the pump station in the park.
I don't know if we need a lot more effluent coming into the public beach either. It's already an issue with odors and things. I don't know if that would be a factor or not, but
Probably not, minimally. We need to do some work on the wet well. That's,
that's the problem.
oh yeah. And I think Tim knows that. Tim definitely knows that. The other side, if anyone's ever been in that pump station, the other side of the pump station is again, the nerd in me, freaking beautiful. I mean, the pumps are brand new. It's a spotless. Tim keeps this place spotless. It's awesome. Spotless. The other half is the wet well. If you've been in that, that's the side that requires 5 masks over your face and you can't stand in there for more than 3 minutes. That's older. It's deeper. It has raw sewage going right through it. So that's where some of your odors coming from. That's the more problematic and more difficult improvement to make. When you have to enhance or upsize a wet well, you're effectively turning that pump station offline and bypassing everything that's in there to get it to where it has to go while you're digging 30 feet in the ground and pouring an astronomical amount of concrete.
Right.
So and part of me does not want to even touch the pump station. If it's the only way to get this district, we need to have discussions between town and village to see whether or not you want it done or whether or not we should even think about doing it. If the answer to that ends up being no, we shouldn't do it, then we would start looking at how do we connect to the force main or go around the pump station without sending those flows there. And if that's not feasible, then really the district kind of gets a kibosh. I think some of you do know the district is part of a larger project that we're working on. The town is working on what we're calling the Lakeshore Drive Reconstruction Project. It will realign the road. It will create a multi-use path on the left, the western side, pedestrian infrastructure, lighting, bus stops, the gamut.
You know, from being a cyclist, that is a dangerous, you don't ride that road.
Well, are you gonna get across English Brook too? Are you gonna why?
We already got $1.5 million to do the bridge at English Brook. That's already in hand. What we're
Definitely a
doing,
needed project.
what we're doing is piecemealing it because it's all together, it could be $30 million. Half of that might be the sewer district. The other half being the road work, the infrastructure, the stormwater that has to go in for the road work. And while we're there, we're gonna fix some water stuff, right? There's a lot of zigzaggies up the road with the water line. We could put a couple million into water to give us more time on the lifespan of that network that goes up there. But we're trying to piecemeal stuff because it's such a large price tag. So the first amount of money we were given, we got $250,000 to do the preliminary design. That was to get us started with what the design might look like. That project will start in January and it will include public meetings and hopefully input from all of you. The second chunk of money we were awarded also last year was $1.5 million from DOT through Bridge New York to do the bridge over English Brook. That was one of the linchpins in this project was how do we deal with the bridge? So that was a solid enough application for them to award us the full amount. And that is also one that will be starting next year for design. Construction is probably a few years out for the bridge component. while we're doing all this, we're also looking at funding for the roadway work, but the biggest piece of the project is the sewer district. And whether or not we have to go after funding for that, how deep we're digging. If we don't do the sewer district, there's not a lot of excavation we really have to do on the road. There is full excavation for a sewer district, including probably millions of dollars of bedrock blasting. So, it changes the project, but it doesn't change the town's interest in doing the project. Even if the sewer district is not feasible and it gets scrapped, we still want to move ahead with the transportation side of the project. But I wanted to talk to you today about it because of what I mentioned, the linchpin, the most important part right now is the potential impact on the village system, and the state has asked us a bunch of questions that Tim is helping us answer. But I think once we have the answers, we can better discuss what it looks like. And if we feel there's a negative impact, or if we feel, hey, we're at 80% capacity in the pump station and this will put us at 95, we don't want to do it, that's fine. We just need to have that dialogue and make those decisions so they know what to do with the district.
The more people we can get off of septic systems and into that wastewater
better.
treatment plant, the better.
You know what else?
Better for the lake.
Better for the lake quality. You know what else it will mean though, and this is something that will make a difference to both of us, both town and village. While the Caldwell Sewer District is experiencing the increases and having to pay more on the unit rate, and while you guys are trying to figure out your rent structure, if we add another 25% of flows to the system, as long as the system can accommodate that, the increase, the O&M is not it's not gonna go up by 20 or 25%. So it will stabilize some of the numbers that the people in the village and Caldwell are paying, because it will effectively be partially subsidized by the others paying into the network.
Right.
So it could reduce rates for all the existing users a little bit.
We need a better, we have a terrible agreement with, the state.
We do. They don't even pay us.
Yeah.
You guys are lucky enough, you're able to have, through state law, you're able to have a contract because you're a village.
Right.
The town does not have that same affordability in town law, and they have, shouldered us for a long time. They do not pay sewer for $1 Million Beach, for the campground over there, for the garage and the Lake George Park Commission building. They do not pay sewer to the town for any of that stuff. And we've estimated before that could likely be 15% of the flows in the district.
A lot of I there, a lot of inflow especially.
There's a lot. We handled some on Fort George Road, but there's still more.
I'm just wondering about this, like the long-term effects that it would have on the wastewater treatment plant, just because the village is the main funder of that. Anytime Tim needs something, we're the ones that are paying for it. So like long-term, I'm wondering like,
You're the ones that are getting
Repairs.
the finance.
well.
The town
I
is
mean,
paying for 47.
The town pays by
Yeah,
flow, but
But then if something breaks up there, right, in the wastewater treatment plant, the village pays, we have to come out of our budget. So like, yes, there's money that we're getting from you for that, but I think it's a lovely project. I know when you expand wastewater treatment, like the district sewer districts, there's always that, it's gonna increase in price, obviously.
It'll increase O&M a little bit.
Yeah,
The good news about the plant, other than the fact that it's brand new, the capacity is 1.75
sure.
a day. We're hitting peak days are about 1 million. We're numerically, we're nowhere near capacity. The conveyance system is a different story, and the pump station is a different story.
Yeah.
And the town has a sewer district that's a little bigger in geography, but not bigger in flows than the village. We have 2 pump stations.
Yeah.
One's somewhat obsolete because it gets pumped to from the other. But you guys are operating more flows off one pump station. So that, in my opinion, that's the biggest thing, is the pump station and the impact to Shepherd Park. And I think Tim, rightfully so, I think Tim's a little nervous about it, because if we have to do a $5 million enhancement to the pump station just to accommodate this district, that's a lot on him as well, right? It's a lot of oversight on it will have to expand the wet well. We might even have to expand the pump room and add another pump. There's already, they're only 12 years old,
Yeah,
right? 2010 or something?
yeah.
There's 4 pumps in there, including the big boy.
3 standard, they use pumps and then the number 4 pump is the backup.
The backup, and then is there a 5th that's like a,
Well, that's the,
Full
that's
backup?
the,
Wheeled
the,
one.
the Gorman Rupp, which is
Gorman
our last line of defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that will power the whole thing?
Portable one?
It's the,
Portable, yeah.
that pipe that's
The blue,
sticking out.
yeah, portable one, yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
portable one.
So will we
So
be going for money for something like that?
You
Or is
have
that, that's not
we would have
something
to,
that
the
would.
village would not, the
fund?
village would not bear.
We wouldn't
not-
bear the cost of that, no.
Because it's our district that would be, our district would be provoking the need for it, so we would have to pay for it, and if. Again, it would make it harder on the town district taxpayers, because a $15 million project going to 20 doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna get that much more in grant funding. So we have to look from our perspective, policy wise, political, the political aspect of it, is it a reasonable rate per thousand on assessed value? And if we come up with a similar structure to Caldwell, is that reasonable?
Mhm.
If it prices them all out and they're, everybody on that street is up in arms, we don't want to do this, then we may not do it. But we're looking at it still as part of the overall
From
project.
an environmental standpoint, it's a beauty of a project, but.
Checks all boxes.
You need to get the environmental people to fund it.
Yeah.
Like your
Contribute, for sure,
DEC
yeah.
and your fund and all of these, well, fund is no longer, but,
Yeah.
that's not something that the LGA can shoulder.
No,
The LGA could shoulder the cost of maybe, I was talking to Chris yesterday about a live edge plow. That's something that they can pay for. They did that with the town and the brine solution, but.
Yep.
So that's not a big ticket, that's too big of a ticket item, so it's definitely your DEC or.
big
Grants.
grants, and then possibly even set asides or state legislature money. Something like that, we go to Dan Steck and Map Simpson and tell, hey, guys, we need $5 million.
That big check.
We look at the benefits, the potential benefits to water quality and et cetera. We need some set aside money out of legislative funding, and it's possible to get that. It would involve some lobbying and trips to Albany, just like we did for the treatment plant. But before any of that happens, we need to finish this study, and then we need to start having discussions on what it looks like for both of us. If it's feasible, we'll try to move ahead and go get money. If it's not, then it's not. But hopefully you'll still see a multi-use path on that road in a couple of years.
Oh, that's easy enough.
Yeah. So that's the sewer study. And when it's done, I will send it, I'll get it either on the website or send it to you guys, personal emails, whatever.
I think a repository on our website is probably the best for us to just click on the link and then we got it.
Water studies. So I forgot to mention with the sewer study, what I did when I sent these studies out, I actually forwarded emails to you that I had sent to the town board. They're summary emails, so they're long emails, but there's a bunch of bullet points on every single one, and the studies were attached. I don't know that they read the studies, but I know that they read my email because it's only a couple of bullet points. That's why I put what I believe to be the most important information for you as policymakers, and the ones looking at the dollars. I put those in those line items, those bullet points that are in the email. And I'll quickly go through both of them because we're approaching 2 here. The village water capacity analysis. That study went very well. CT Mail was great. Jake and his team came up with a good product. There's a lot of interesting findings in here, and I think we got all of our questions. In my opinion, we got all of our questions answered. The village planning board, the town planning board, we've all been asking questions. These projects are coming in, they're using more water. We want to know what our capacity is, if our infrastructure is okay, the tanks, the plant, all of it. It was all looked at. Money well spent, very good report. Couple of high, not action items, but high takeaways, findings from this. The total usage is well under our maximum capacity. We have a specific maximum capacity that we can draw from the lake and treat at the plant, effectively the same number that we could logistically push out. We'd never have gotten that high, and I don't think we probably ever will get to 2 million gallons a day. realistically, we don't want to exceed the number that's capable of being treated at the treatment plant, at the wastewater plant. So if at any point in time we get close to 1.75, that's when we start kind of sweating and thinking about what.
Papers are flying around the room
Yeah,
and we're
what are we
running in
doing?
circles like Benny Hill.
So, but in terms of the system, the conveyance, the lines, the storage, even the treatment plant, we are under capacity and we have the capacity to deal with the additional projects we've been seeing at both planning boards, which is good for us, right? We're getting more tax assessment, more valuation from these developments. Some of them are residential. We're getting more units. So we're getting that economic development piece, and eventually when the point in time comes that we do need to make upgrades, there's more people to pay into it. So that was probably the biggest takeaway was the capacity. We're under capacity, which was really the impetus for the study. This next bullet down is something that is important to the village, but has already been addressed and is already being tackled to a degree. At the point in time the study came out, the total water billed was roughly half of the water demand. So about half of the water that was being sent out of the plant was being paid for to the village. What that means is there's a sizable or was a sizable amount of water loss. Lori has reported in the month since this study was completed back in August, we are down somewhat 20%.
Yeah.
We're down 20% of water loss, which means we're probably close to 30% loss, which is relatively close to what is an average across municipalities and in other areas that everybody has loss. There's no community that doesn't have loss, but there's a fluctuating number depending on many circumstances. But the key point here is we had a lot, we've reduced it already, which is critical to the financial aspect of the water system. Because we were effectively giving out free water, right? And people were not, I don't want to say giving out, people were stealing water.
They still are.
And the dark side of that too is if you steal water, if we go to a sewer rate, then you'd be stealing sewer too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then it's a 2-for-1 once you go to that.
So it's good that it's being tracked down. It's good that we're looking at, different ordinances to address tampering with devices. We're gonna have a certain percentage just because of bleeders that exist out there. So I think that's critical. The identification of the loss and the fact that it has been minimized in a couple months is huge, and a credit to the water department and Lori for minimizing it within 6 months. That should help moving forward on the dollar side. In terms of upgrades, there is a minor need of repairs at some of the facilities, which was identified in the study to be budgeted for through current budgeting or future years of water use collection, right? Every dollar that's collected through Lori's bills covers both the O&M and effectively long-term upgrades or repairs. We'll talk about this in a second, but at the point in time when the town develops a water district, the town will be able to chip in for larger repairs, things like treatment plant upgrades, pump station upgrades. That's once a district gets set up. But the repairs needed were minor. There was a check valve repair needed at Beach Road Pump Station. Minor. That's just, we do it in the normal course of our year.
Right.
Some little TLC, I call it TLC work to the storage tanks, painting, things like that are just, asset management plan type things. Every 5 or 10 years, you're doing stuff like this, replacing valves, painting tanks. There was a little bit of valve and actuator work at the treatment plant, but that was nothing critical. I think the major thing that was needed in long term, and this has to deal with the town and the village, is the treatment plant. As we encourage development, we're encouraging housing, we're encouraging increased density. We're trying to do smart growth development, encouraging infill. We're going to start to see the pressure reverberate through the numbers in water and sewer. And once we approach these numbers, I mentioned earlier, 175 on the sewer side, but also on the water side, once we start to approach that, we need to start thinking about capital improvements to the water plant. The primary improvement that will likely be needed once we get closer to our max capacity is an additional filter at the back of the plant. When the upgrades were made years, it was 10 years ago,
On,
at the plant.
oh, yeah, it was about 8 years ago.
About 8 years, yeah.
Yeah,
So when those were made, they actually accommodated for a future potential fourth filter in the back.
Yeah.
They identified an area where it could be, and effectively there was nothing operationally critical that was plugged in that area, so that we could effectively knock out the wall and go back.
and it was designed.
It was, yeah, it was
Yeah.
designed with that in mind.
So that's probably the single major upgrade needed in the next, my assumption is probably 5 to 10 years out. If all of these projects we are thinking will do come through, then we're gonna be closer to that point in time. But it's possible some of them won't come through. There was one that was in the study that we identified with 150 units that may very well never happen. So it's really an unknown. You don't ever know when you're gonna get close until you're close,
Until
right?
there.
Until that point in time arrives. But that is something that will be obviously shared. By that point in time, we'll have a town water district. And that could be shared between the village users and the town water district users. There is one smaller project that is needed, but it's not really specific to the village. You guys may know about it already because we've talked about the issues that exist, but at the end of Bloody Pond Road, there's a Swiss cheese galvanized line that is undersized and old and about to just crumble. And we being the town, we need to do that project once the water district is created. We cannot do it prior, and you guys cannot do it. It is outside the municipal bounds of the village. So, I don't know when that will be completed. It is not slated to go in the map plan and report that would create the water district. That's, strategic, right? If there's any point in time you're creating a special district and you cannot immediately plug in debt, take that chance, right? Take that opportunity to not plug in debt immediately. If a year or two later, we need to finance, 300,000 to go do that line, it is what it is. The amount of money people are paying, based on assessed value in that entire district, it's gonna be peanuts.
What about the water tanks?
Water tanks.
I never asked about it the other day when we had our meeting with Matt and Bob. But the water tanks that we own are outside of the bounds of the village. If that's part of the water infrastructure that we're essentially giving the town. Once
It
they
doesn't
create,
have to be,
doesn't have to
because
be,
it's on property owned by you.
okay,
The main reason you're giving us the pipes that are in the roads is because they're in public right of way, and they
Okay.
can't be yours outside of your municipal bound. You can have your infrastructure wherever the heck you want it if it's on land owned by you. So
Okay.
same goes.
as long
for-
as we own the land, gotcha.
Right, same goes for the wastewater treatment plant.
Mhm.
There will be an interesting thing that will come up, though, when the town water district is created. You guys will effectively be getting water from us
Right,
at the
sort
treatment
of,
plant.
yeah.
We need to talk about that at a future meeting.
Okay.
But there's a lot of nuances in there, right, because of the town village thing, but I think moving forward, the town establishes a water district. We are in great shape with the village water system. It has been taken care of impeccably. Keith and Chris do a great job. The plant is in perfect order. The conveyance system really needs no work. We have breaks and things that come up, but that's really it. And the summary, if you read the report that CT Mail finished, they basically said this is one of the best systems we've ever analyzed, and fewest problems that we've seen. So I think that's a silver lining, right? That's a little feather that we get to say, look we've been doing really good with water. And the only things we need to consider ourselves or concern ourselves with is potential for expansion. And that's based on future growth. It's not based on anything that's happening today. So that's the village study. Any questions on that? No?
I feel like this may not be relevant. What about what's gonna happen when we have to replace pipes? That's
In the town or in the village?
just in the village, Like which type of pipes are we
Lead-
trying to?
the lead pipes?
pipe.
Well, we don't have any lead pipes. We have yet to find a lead pipe in the
No one's
village.
found any lead
No.
pipes at all. Oh, wow, that's wonderful.
That's really good. I mean,
That's
it's great, but
And they weren't commonly used for distribution lines.
Okay.
What they were commonly used for were hookups at houses and connections, laterals and things like that. But through the survey they've been doing, I don't think there's been any that have been identified.
and then what we were expecting was like they were like a pre-bent called
Goose,
yoke
gooseneck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gooseneck, and we didn't find one. We have not found a single lead
Okay.
pipe.
Oh, so
we
it's
haven't
really
found any either.
We're not done with it yet, but.
Right, I-
It's showing positive that, we shouldn't have any issues.
Okay.
And if there is one, it'll be remedied.
Simple fix.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't find one that's like, the main line under Phillip is,
Okay.
Well, it doesn't apply to anything, larger than 2-inch diameter.
Oh, it
for
doesn't?
service.
the
No, it's-
remediation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, two-inch diameter service and smaller.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so.
So it's
a
only gonna be
a
laterals.
3-inch, main, to a 4-inch main,
Not
it doesn't
good.
apply.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. And those would be transite anyway.
Mostly, but some are still cast, believe it or not,
Yeah.
the smaller diameters. Yeah.
Okay, so that has no effect.
So that's the village water study, which is a good segue for the town water study. This is one that we did pretty much at the same time. We did this the same time you guys did the CT mail study. We worked with Sean Doty at KSPE to do a town water district feasibility study, another feasibility study. And I really like doing those because it helps us figure out if something we want to do is even a possibility, right? Because you can start the effort, you can start the analysis, you can look as hard as you want, but if you don't have the information you need to understand if it's feasible, it's all exercise in futility. So what we did, after talking about the need for the district, we hired KSPE. They helped us identify potential district boundaries, potential users. We even put in the potential for the different structures to retire debt, whether we want to do it based on assessed value or create some EDU formula, which is something that a lot of communities have. That's an attempt to be more equitable in terms of basing it off of what value there is to a property. Those high value properties may have little use. So the EDU formula attempts to split the burden more appropriately based on the usage of water, which is what you guys are trying to do with sewer right now, right? So again, the email summarizes the high bullet points, key findings from the study. We identified the district size and location, even though it loops around the village. It can be one district. It does not have to be two, which is good for us because having two is an administrative nightmare. Together, there would be roughly 1,000 parcels that would be in the district. It is everywhere that is currently serviced by water. So water is effectively in the entire area of the Caldwell Sewer District. It goes around the east side of the lake. It comes down the south portion of town along 9, stops at Waterside World. It goes up past the village on Lakeshore Drive. There's actually a service line that goes all the way up to Hearthstone. So people in that whole stretch have water. There's even some water. Lakeview Circle has water. Platte Road and that little nook there, Schemmerhorn Lane, they've got water. Going up 9 towards Warrensburg, there's some people up there that have water. So effectively, we're drawing a district boundary around everybody that's currently served, and anyone that falls in that area would be paying into the district only for debt. And we talked about this at a recent meeting with the lawyers. The way we would structure this is we would contract with the village, the town would contract with the village very similarly to the way we do Caldwell Sewer. And we would have Lori continue to operate the billing infrastructure, the whole process that she goes through to bill people. None of that would change. She would continue collecting money based on the usage. What the town district would collect would be capital reserve monies for future projects that we need to chip in for, as well as any debt that we need to retire, like Bloody Pond Road. When we do the Bloody Pond Road line, we're gonna levy tax on our taxpayers, not the village. So we have to collect money based on assessed value or EDUs to retire that debt. We would also probably 20, 30, 40,000 a year collect capital reserve for the point in time when we do have to do a treatment plant upgrade or something big that's shared, then the town will have money to chip in, so to speak. So the second bullet point was really just the options for debt retirement. That's a policy decision the town board has to make. What's easiest? Assess value, right? There's already a spreadsheet with a list of all the properties and what they're valued. You plug a number in at the bottom and divide it, and then you come up with a rate. It's actually very easy. The EDU is incredibly difficult because we need to have our assessor go out and figure out how many units or something every single property has. So that is less likely, but it's probably a little more equitable in terms of who's paying. The users, the restaurants get a certain amount of units, and single family dwellings get a certain amount of units. Hotels, each room gets a unit. So there's a complicated formula to figure it out, but that's for them to decide. We did talk about in this email billing software concerns and limitations. I do feel like after our recent couple meetings with the group on water and Lori, I do feel like a lot of that is probably quelled. I do think the one hurdle she's gonna have is in her software, trying to split the water users in the town from the water users in the village. I think she can do it, but I think it will be a little lift for her to do. And I think once that's done, then there's probably no hurdles or hiccups in the billing. And
She said it would be based on the user number, it would
Yes.
either be a T or a V next to it. That's the only division that.
easy
you'd have
way
do.
to sort of categorize something so it's split. Also in this email was a bullet point on preliminary village conversations. We've already started this. This email was originally to the town, so that's why it referenced the village. You guys, actually, the mayor was on it, but nobody else was on it. When I forwarded to you guys, just the same email, so we wanted to start having our discussions with the village at the town level. That has already started, and we're now piggybacking on our monthly meetings to talk about water district stuff. We've got the lawyers involved. I think it's gonna go relatively smoothly in terms of process. It's just the timeline and the legislative process that's required. Just like with the sewer district I talked about, any special district requires a map, plan, and report. It's the guiding document for the district. What the benefit is that's being observed, how you're collecting money, how it's being doled out amongst the users, et cetera. So that is the next 6 months, us developing a map, plan, and report so that the town board can consider it for adoption and set up the district. One of the things that we haven't figured out yet is the maps. There are a sizable amount of properties scattered about in the town that are within infrastructure district bounds that are not actually being served. Either it's a vacant property or for some weird reason they have a well or something like that. There's a handful of them, and there's also a handful of private lines that people get water through our system, but it's their private line, like the line on Front Street, privately owned, the line on Mockingbird Hill, right? Private,
That's an HOA.
but their Transcorp privately owned.
Yeah.
So we need to talk with the lawyers about whether or not we can even draw a district around those private lines, or if we want to. So there's a lot of intricacies with forming the district, but the village has been and will be kept in the loop the entire way. Keith's been at our meetings, Ray's been at our meetings, Matt has been at our meetings as well. And any, the furthering of this study, the map plan and report, all of that stuff, I can report to you guys on as it relates to the impact on the village. The last item in here was about the projects. I've already mentioned that, some of these projects are gonna happen. The 26 senior living apartments on Bloody Pond Road, that project's gonna happen. The 150 I mentioned earlier is a project that Ruben is hoping to do down by Magic Forest. that project may not happen. He doesn't want to put a miniature treatment plant on his property. And to run a line down Bloody Pond or up the hill to Goonie Golf is gonna probably not be cost beneficial to his job. So some of those that are in the study, the capacity study will occur, some won't, but I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think there's an issue with capacity for probably the next decade. But we'll keep our eye on it as it grows and continues. Where's my agenda here? We are over 2:00, but we're
Yeah.
pretty close. We did that.
Would be here.
Does everyone have a few more minutes? Till 2:30 maybe?
We have an extended agenda for,
It will literally take
okay.
1 minute.
Yeah, we have,
It's-
yeah.
So there's two things here that are left, and I invited both Carol and Jim to be here for the zoning amendments discussion. I do want to start that today, but I think this alone could be a whole special meeting talking about zoning updates. Not,
We can
not-
incorporate that into the next one.
Okay.
Next one we do, but I mean, I think we're all on board with everything.
yeah, we'll spend 5 minutes on that, but I do want to talk about DRI while we're all here and we're talking about planning stuff. The DRI application, we've been working on this for a while now. We formed our committee a year ago. It was submitted at the end of September.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, we had a visit from Empire State Development folks and New York State Department of State folks. They came up in the middle of October. We did a walk around the village and town. We showed them project sites. We talked about some of the transformational projects we think are in here. And not even 10 days after that, we gave a presentation to their Special Initiatives Committee, which is a ancillary group of people who help the state decide who wins this money from each region. The site visit went very, very well. I think they got a good grasp of our projects. I think we were able to show them enough, and most importantly, the interconnectedness of all the things we're trying to do in this package. The presentation went pretty well. We had a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm long-winded, so there wasn't a lot of time for questions and answers at the end, but we got a few out of there. We did get an email after we finished from somebody at Empire State that said excellent job, so I think they think we did fine. Most importantly, this document that came out of Elon and the committee is a phenomenal application for funding. It was graphically prepared well. Each project that is in here has its own merit in terms of economic development or transformation of the village or town. And we think they all build upon each other, and they build on our relationship. They build upon the partnership between the town and the village, and they build upon all the partnerships that we have with these entities out there, whether it be the LGA, Soil and Water, the Historical Association, CDTA, the Battlefield Park Alliance. Every single project had a partner, and they thought that was special. They also thought the reinterment project being in there was special and unique. They loved the housing project. That was number one for a reason, because they said focus on housing. That is in the governor's hit list, put it at the top. So we feel we have a compelling application. I've heard from many people that the interview and the site visit within a month of submission is an incredibly strong sign. So for those of you that are here on the village board, I think pretty soon we're gonna have to put our money where our mouth was. We may very well hear in the next 2 months that we won this and that we have to chip in a couple dollars to go do our local match share of the projects. If that happens, you will know immediately if we were awarded, and you will be involved. Both you and the town board will be involved the entire step of the way. Some of you will probably even be on the committee that is formed to spearhead implementation. But I do want you to know it's in the next 2 months, we'll probably know. And if it's positive and we won, we're gonna have to come up with some bucks in the next budget cycle, or maybe the cycle after that, depending on how long the contract takes. But there will be a lot of moving pieces.
And some champagne too.
and some champagne and
We worked hard on this.
a good party.
It was very intimidating to be on a Zoom call with everyone that controls your destiny over the next,
Yeah.
5 to 10
$10
years.
million.
Yeah.
And they were kind of just like super laissez-faire about it.
We cannot find any other community, and at least nobody's talking, another community in our region, which is the capital region, that applied for this money.
Nope.
We have not found another community. We might be the only applicant for the
When
That's
I-
a
capital region. That would be great.
Good chance of
It's
winning
like
that
running
way,
on a
right?
post.
Well, when I asked one
Running
of the guys from ESD who else submitted, and he was like, he took a pause. And then he was like, there were a few. So maybe that's true, maybe there were none. What I've been hanging my hat on and telling everybody, this is the 7th round of DRI. There's been 6 awards for every region in the state over the past 6 years. Glens Falls won in year 1, the first year they were awarded. Everyone else that has been awarded years 2 through 6 in the capital region have been in the Albany metro area. So if anyone knows how grant awarding works, or a portion of it, some of it is based on your application. Some of it is based on politics. The political side, somebody is gonna wanna put a pin geographically north of Saratoga Springs or north of Albany in general for this upcoming round, because the last 5 have literally formed a circle around Albany. Albany, Troy, Schenectady, the last year's award, I think, was Cohoes. So they're all down there, and year 1, which was 6-7 years ago now, is Glens Falls. And so I think geographically we have a leg up. I'm hoping there was only a few, or if we're the only, then we're a shoo-in. But it's looking positive. And this will keep us busy for at least the next 5 years. And I do want to tell you, because I've already told the town board, I promised you 2 to 3 applications, grant applications every year as part of my job. If we win this, I will probably need a year or 2 off from that. Because if we effectively, each project is its own grant. There will be 14 grants in here. So not all are gonna be yours. A couple go to the town, a couple are to the village, a couple are shared. But it would not be a smart move of us, logistically to apply for grants next year, other than the comp plan, if we know we have 7 or 8 pending just for the village. If there's small things, like we wanna go get money for the parking beacons, no big deal. But the things like, we talked about doing the application again for the solar farm at the treatment plant. That may have to wait if we win this.
So the money you're talking about is it 1.2 or 1.5? I think it's
For the
million.
village and township
Yeah,
end,
I feel like I see different things in different places.
the final number should be in the resolution.
And I think the final number was
I
1.5.
think you're right.
Okay, and so then would we know this before our budget talks too,
Would
or
not.
do we just or just gonna say like, let's put this in our budget talk and?
We'll put it in the talk, but I don't think we'll know. We might not know before our budget is completed, but it would go for next year's budget because we
Okay.
would be doing it for the 25-26 budget.
Okay.
I
so-
think it will take at least a year to get the committee formed, to get all the paperwork organized with contracts for the state.
Okay.
And then the funny thing about DRI is you work so hard on this.
Yeah.
Once they award you, they effectively redo this, and they will take projects out that they don't want.
Mhm.
They'll encourage new people or new projects to come on and submit for possibly being included. Some of this will change, most of it, I'm hoping we can convince them to not. And that's because we have so many important projects in here.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think it's 1.5. The towns was 1.5 too. Primarily, if you look through this, the majority of the money that we're budgeting for is to go purchase property.
Right.
Like to purchase the property at Harbor. The town wants to purchase the property where Machio's demolished the old cabins next to the chamber.
He's not gonna, they'll lease it to you. I just talked to Tom.
They said
They'll lease it cheap, they said.
that's fine.
But that's even better,
yeah,
but you'll have
that's-
to find somewhere else to spend some money.
We can do that. We can certainly do that.
For housing.
So, yeah, I
Housing.
mean, and then for like, you know, for the village side, some of it would go towards the housing project, the purchase of the land there, but I think some of the match there was going towards the Shepherd Park project. There was only a couple where we actually identified match, like 7 or 8 of the projects, we were asking for full funding. 600,000 was the project cost, that's what we're asking for. So, and again, those numbers may change, but we're trying to keep them as similar as possible. What won't change is what we've already said we're gonna chip in. We've passed a resolution, we've identified our money. I believe they were not to exceed amounts the way I typed it up. So we won't have to worry about more than that. And it could be however we figure it out over a couple of years, it could be financed, it could just be thrown in the budget. Whatever, whichever way we want to make it work, but I think Ray's right, it will not be this upcoming cycle.
Okay.
It'll be the following one. We're about 2:17. I want to try to spend 2 minutes on codes. Any questions on this? It's possible we will hear in the next 30 days. What I'm hearing is that there will be a non-disclosure agreement required between the day we're told and the day the press release goes out telling the public. Because there's a 3-month gap between those 2 dates.
I want you guys to know, this is the direct result of Dan.
No,
This started out, Dan is a planner, working with other planners, and we hired a planning group. So we had like 7 planners in these meetings.
it was good.
It was
It
like,
was
I was like the dumbest guy in the room. I
No.
gotta be honest with you.
Dan was the happiest guy in the room.
We had a that's one of my best committees ever.
They were brilliant. Everybody on the committee. I mean, we've had anywhere from engineers to planners to attorneys, everybody that contributed
A lot.
positivity to this. And I want to say that application is a direct result of Dan's hard work. I mean, we did hire someone to put it together and make it a little prettier, but Dan really was spearheading most of this.
I like the
stuff.
spearheading job. That's part of my organizational, my need for organization. But it was, you know, it was a group effort. It was the committee that helped put together this application, and that is, like I just said, that's one of the strongest committees I've ever had. Planning board chairs, executive directors from our partners, Jim Siplon, Gina, we had engineers with a county planner. I mean, we had everyone that was needed to be involved at the bigger picture level for the partnership contributed. Even John Carr was on the committee.
Part of the
and
graphics came
he
from
created,
John,
his guy created the logo. So everybody did contribute. Thank you for the kudos, but it was a lift, but it was a good lift. And I think it will be a very, very big step forward and towards 365 if we win this money and we can implement some of these projects. And that was really the crux of the application was we're one Lake George, right? We're working together. We continue to partner, and we want to bring this community into the next generation and to a year-round place. And hopefully some of these projects do that or encourage that to happen. And I think that's where they're gonna make their decision, is if they think that could happen, the state.
Yeah, when we started having meetings a year before we submitted.
We did. We were thinking about submitting last year and we quickly called that off and said, let's spend a year, take the time, develop a nice package.
Trying here.
And that's exactly what we did.
It seems to be going down this side. Skip right over you, Julie.
So, we are over, but I do want to try to get out of here at 2:30. I want to spend just 10 minutes, and I'm sorry to the two of you because I invited you both for this purpose, but we're not going to spend too much time on it. We have been talking for years about pending zoning amendments. I've been keeping a list since I started with the village. Carol has been keeping a list since she started and through her tenure on the planning board, and Jim now has a list of things. A lot of them are overlapping. It's a pretty good Venn diagram of things that need to be changed. There's a couple things that we have that are out there that have been talked about, like the chickens law. I know you guys have been talking about that. That was outside of our list, but it is something that needs to be addressed. The town adopted a chickens law, a year or two ago. Glens Falls has done one recently.
Yeah.
So
That's
there's
kind of a joke, the Glens Falls
It is.
one.
There's some big items in there, like the A-frames. Frankly, it's a absolute nightmare for enforcement for Jim and I. He can tell you all the horror stories and the fact that we've had to bring people to court over these things. So we are proposing some changes to the sign ordinance, most specifically to the A-frames and some of the nitty-gritty things that are in the sign ordinance, not necessarily the meat and potatoes. Something simple like the A-frames are allowed anywhere in the off season. They can be on the sidewalk because they're not inhibiting pedestrian walking, safety, et cetera, et cetera. During the season, they're not allowed on the sidewalk, but you can have them on private property if they're 5 feet back. That eradicates half of the properties in the village. Half the people in the village don't have 5 feet. So what they do, they hang them over the railing, they tape them on the wall, they just stick them out in the sidewalk anyway. I mean, they're and when we go enforce, and this is everywhere, it's not just in Lake George, but the monkey see, monkey do finger pointing here is pretty robust. So when somebody that has no space points to somebody that has space, we look somewhat foolish trying to give an excuse for why that person has an A-frame out. So I have to explain to every single person that points at Bill Masry that he has 15 feet of land out front of his building. He does not, his property line does not stop at the wall of his building. He has a ton of space. So when everybody's A-frames are in, Bill's got 2 out. You know, we've had issues over the years with, for instance, the boats. You know, last year we wrote them a ticket. Wrote them a ticket, they had 7 A-frames out. You know, some of the stuff is trivial. And some of it is, you know, they're just, you know, thumbing to us.
I know what that is.
It would be incredibly efficient for my office and for Jim's work to not have to deal with the silliness that comes along with things like enforcing the A-frames. Frankly, it's not doing all that much for some of the businesses anyway. And when they have their stuff out there, it becomes a competition. You know, the Village Mall is the best example. Everyone wants a sign, but there's not really a lot of space, and there's a limited walkway to get into the mall. So they all have their signs lined up along the inside near the railing. Then one person puts a banner up. Now all 6 places in there have banners up. Nope, none of them have permits, by the way. Then so-and-so kicked over their A-frame, so the other A-frame somewhere else is damaged. And this one has a business that you can't see from this side of the road, so they have A-frames down on this side. And at the end of the day, when we go enforce, it's monkey see, monkey do. Well, so-and-so, point. If we uniformly give everybody the same rights and or take away the same allowances, then I think there will be a vast improvement, at least in Jim's headaches and taking people to court. I mean, we're paying lawyers' fees to people and not getting sizable fines, which is another item that we want to address in the list. They're not even covering the attorney's fees that we're being billed for. You know, the fines, $250. These people are gladly infracting. They are purposefully telling us, that's fine, that's not a lot, I'll just do it. I'll pay the $250.
Cost of doing business.
Exactly. I had Tommy Z, and I don't have any problems with Tommy. We get along, but we gave him a ticket for signage stuff, and he came in my office one day and slapped $500 on my desk. Said, "I'm leaving." You got to go to court, man. That's just it. It's like some of it is attitude. Some of it is people care too much about what their competitors are doing. But at the end of the day, it's causing an absolute nightmare. And then there's complaints that come in and we have to address them. And this one's trying to get that one fired. It's a lot of nonsense over trivial stuff like A-frames. Similarly, there are other things that are happening out there that are not even in code. You've probably all noticed that every single business now has outdoor lights, string lights, LED lights, no offense. They're every business, the newest are the blue lights over at the breakfast spot.
We got nothing. I looked. There's
There's
nothing.
nothing in there on that type of lighting, no.
Yeah.
Some of them look fine. Some of them are tasteful and look fine. In my opinion, the blue ones don't, but that's just my opinion. And there needs to be a codification of what is allowed or what needs to go to the planning board or what should be reviewed, how it should look. Instead of, what happened is the first business put lights up. Within a month, there was 10 businesses up, and by the end of this season, every single business had lights up. And that goes back to the monkey see, monkey do, but it's also, these people are, in some regard, they're just trying to make their business look better. They're just trying to attract more people. So how can we allow that purposefully? How can we allow it in a tasteful manner when there's process that is followed and there is, at the end of the day, there's no issue with it? It may not be the same solution as the A-frame. The A-frame thing, my opinion, we need to just outlaw them in the season.
It's not an effective form of marketing. If you research marketing, it's kind of just white noise.
It is.
What,
It's like-
A-frames or the
Yeah,
lights?
Wait, A-frame.
A-frame.
I know.
It's
Well-
white noise, so
Yeah.
people don't look at them.
I mentioned this to Ray,
The only place I would allow them, and we had talked about verbiage to allow them for directional purposes and our resorts, like,
yeah, the big,
the A-frame sign at the Georgian telling you where the pool is. That's not bothering anybody on the main
Sidewalk.
street that's walking by, and it's on their property anyway. So that would be the only people I would allow
Yeah.
to use A-frames during the year.
I mean,
We hate them.
This
me and
is,
Carol.
this is
We've had at
everybody's
length.
form of marketing
Yeah.
now, that probably should
Which-
be.
and to your
So-
We
point,
are underutilizing, which I can bring up to it
Yeah.
at a later date, but
to that point though, Allison, when we go on vacations with my family, we try to go to a beach somewhere and I like boardwalks. I like to go, shopping and eating on boardwalks. Every single place that I've been to along the East Coast that has a boardwalk.
Yeah.
No A-frames,
Yeah.
not in Wildwood, not in Myrtle. Almost every single place down the coast has no A-frames.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because they're on a boardwalk and they're situated right where people are passing by, but we have sidewalks.
Yeah,
It's not like, and we have wide sidewalks and that's where our people are. Not everybody is paying attention to the signs. If they want to go in a store to shop or to spend money, they're going to see the store likely and do it anyway. Jose, and this is just, I don't want to use him purposefully, but he has one of the best examples. If you're on Canada Street and don't go down by the water, you would not know his business is there.
mhm.
So, no offense, right? If you don't go down by the water, the same could be said for the lagoon.
Yeah.
There's no optical from Canada. And so when we start talking about exemptions or things that could be allowed, Pizza Jerks, another good example. For years, Pizza Jerks in the off season has been putting their A-frame on the corner of Canada. We've not really bothered them because they had one sign and it was the off season. But we do need to think about how to accommodate the businesses that do truly have hardship. Instead of just wiping completely, there are a couple out there that have the need. Most of them do not. When we have a 25-foot wide storefront that has 3 A-frames out front, no need, absolutely no need. And when we have neighbors who are against each other and each day one another's A-frame goes further out, and then we ticket them both
in front of the other store.
in front of the other store. We ticket them both and what happens? They point at each other. So personally, I think dealing with this A-frame thing, it might even improve relationship amongst the business owners because they're all doing this.
Bite your tongue.
But then like setting up some other system.
Yeah.
That in place.
Or some other allowance. Every business that serves food or drink can have a menu board.
Yeah.
And slowly they've been figuring out, geez, this is better for me anyway. I could just put up a menu board that has my menu instead of sending somebody out every single day to erase a chalkboard and write on the new special. They just go like
Used to have an allowance for, and I think it's still in our code, an allowance for And I think they even called it out as a menu girl or something to that effect.
Oh, yeah.
It was, they would have like, pay someone minimum wage. It was usually a young girl that was too young to serve.
Yeah.
So she would just allow people to view the menus on the thing. It was quite popular. I think it's still written in our code.
Would menu boards be considered,
Get a size
Garbage.
limit, right?
There is a size limit.
well, There's a size limit in the sidewalk cafes, which are on village property, but there is no size limit for menu boards. This is where our code starts to fall apart.
Unravel.
So there is no size limit for menu boards that are not part of the sidewalk cafe. For your information, the sidewalk cafe came in later than the original menu board idea. So when that came into play, a lot of thought was given to it and how we wanted the village to look, allowing sidewalk cafes on village property, but the cross-reference of we're gonna allow menu boards on village sidewalk cafes. The cross-reference was never researched to say, okay, but what do we do elsewhere? So now you have two sections of the code that are different, and quite honestly, people who are out there, first of all, patrons, they don't know the difference between a village sidewalk cafe and a, they just don't.
Right.
And also, many of the business owners don't either. It's, you know, how come they have a menu board? Well, because it's allowed for on sidewalk cafes, which are on village property. But so that's one of the things Deanna and I have talked about, that there's several sections in the code where it's working at cross purposes. So in answer to your question, there really isn't. It depends on where you are.
well, cause that could be a big, you know, it's. Gosh, you're right. It's a guy was asked the question, but you answered it already. It's just, you're chasing your tail.
Right.
There isn't.
So there's a couple things, and I think we need to think about how much of this apple are we biting off in the off season? How much are we attempting to bite off before we get into the comp plan, which will steer the big changes that we want to see made? My personal opinion is we can hit some of the low hanging fruit this off season, especially if they're all in zoning. You just put all those amendments into one local law. And it could be one, and maybe you're amending 10 sections, but it's still one adoption and one process. We could hit the A-frames, we can hit the fines. The fines are way too low, $250. We just increased ours to 500 and 1,000 over there. And I know you guys started talking about a fee schedule and looking at fees and costs for everything. That could dovetail in perfectly where we identify a schedule that not only has business license tiers and things of that nature, but fine amounts based on infractions or, you know, the peddlers.
Repetitive
We just had
infractions.
the peddler, the guy that sells the balloons for the third time at the end of the season here, and he just keeps coming up and paying the $100. I mean, he's making $100 in 4 balloons. It's not the everyday normal businesses and the people that are trying to do it right that we're aiming to go after. It's the ones that persistently abuse the process and the code, the ones that thumb their nose at us, the people that just don't care, just like the peddler. This guy comes up from Schenectady or wherever he comes from. We have to chase him down and figure out what his name was so we could even write this guy a ticket. I mean, there's a clear chapter of our ordinance about peddling and soliciting.
He's got a
So-
name, the peddler. Huh?
The peddler.
I like
That's
the
the
Riddler
peddler.
from Batman.
The peddler.
And he sneaks around the corner with a balloon.
So I think some of these things in the zoning code, they could be in one off-season amendment, and then some of the bigger stuff, like looking comprehensively at the signed ordinance, that could maybe come after the comp plan.
Yeah, I think a couple of sign ordinance things, like the 4-color limitation is it kind of bordering on ridiculous. I mean, you could only have 4 colors on your sign. It's actually in our law.
I know that's in our law.
And some of the other thing was,
For it, but there was something that
Something provoking
prompted Mayor Bob to go with the 4 colors.
to go for
There's
it.
a reason if you want things to look uniform, you do it. I know some
But
people
it has
have
been,
thoughts
some of the stuff in the sign ordinance has not only been irking the business community, it's been, I mean, I've had a couple businesses that wanted to come here and they never ended up coming here because they were gonna have trouble with their signs. So there's a line between what's practical, what's logical, what will actually provoke something that looks good,
Yeah.
right? Who's drawing the line between 4 and 5? We had to send Vince to the zoning board because his sign had 6 colors in it, and that was because somebody on the planning board made a determination that white was a color. So, and then we had a back and forth because I disagreed that white was a color. White is not a color. That's my opinion. But that was not an opinion of somebody on the board who was making the decision. So ultimately, the reason Vince was so upset with the sign is because he went to the planning board. They determined there was more than 4. Then he had to go to the zoning board and they started giving him trouble and they ended up saying no. The code says no more than 4. You got purples and oranges and all these weird things on there. Make it 4 colors. So what did he come back with? A pretty bland sign.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the number is. I don't know if we change it or we just completely scrap the number.
Well, like
color.
Phases went to the ZBA and got an approval because they have rainbow kind of colors on their sign.
And
But see,
the
no one
color
knows
was,
Right,
So every business owner out there.
Well, look
sees
at
that
his sign.
Phases has
yeah, look at
all
his
these
sign.
colors,
It's
they
the
don't
point,
know what
the
they
monkey
had
see,
to go
monkey do
through.
again.
One of the things that Dan and I talked about, and we can think about this when we're working on the comp plan, is to allow for administrative approval of things. You can do this. So if, for instance, we come up with a sign ordinance and this is the sign ordinance and your sign meets all of this criteria, you don't have to go before the planning board. But one of the things we need to think about is the fee schedule, because if you don't go before the planning board, you're not paying for a sign application and coming before the planning board. So you have to incorporate all of that so that we, the village, gets money. But there are ways to make the businesses feel more comfortable by putting some parameters in place and saying, if you do this, you don't have to wait a month or 2 months. We can set up some more reasonable timelines. You don't want to come into Dan's office at, the middle of the day. But there's ways to work around from a compliance perspective. There's ways to work around it so that the businesses feel like they're actually part of the community too. And feel like they're part of how we're trying to get the village to look.
agreed. And I think, going through this process, we have a public hearing. The local law process requires a public hearing. Maybe we invite some of the business owners that have several businesses or they're more boisterous or something. And we encourage their input. We developed a special committee when we did the amusements updates. So maybe that's something that happens in the future. I don't know that it has to happen for these off-season things. But I do want to try and tackle, starting maybe in January, the first couple resolutions to get this train rolling. It will cover A-frames. It would probably maybe touch on the string lights outside. We want to revisit outside music. What we're seeing now is many places are putting speakers out. We have a relatively recent law, one of the Masry laws, I call it, that was aimed at the music coming out of Dilligaff. And it actually exempted music from like restaurants and taverns and stuff. And that's fine, but in that code, it says outdoor music or speakers or things that convey music shall be approved by the planning board. And I've got businesses that are putting speakers outside and then we reach out to them and they get all bent out of shape because maybe they had a speaker 5 years ago and they didn't use it for 5 years, but it was there and they want to be grandfathered and they don't want to go to the planning board. It's bothersome. So there's a lot of it sounds silly, but they're still pertinent to my office's work and Jim's work with enforcement, because one day we go out there and some place has blue lights and they're blasting music and we think this is all new. Because they didn't come in and tell us, they didn't go to the planning board and get an approval. So we need to clearly define, I think, what we want to see and have for signage, for lights, for music. Again, the fines need to be upped. We should, and what Carol said is right on track. I think even the application fees could be skewed a little bit. At the town, we have a differentiation between residential and commercial. But here, if anybody goes to the planning board, they pay $250. If anybody goes to the zoning board, they pay $250. So I had a little old lady on Sewell wanted to do a tiny addition on her house. And it needed to go to the zoning board. But it was an addition to a structure, so I sent it to the planning board, so she had to pay $500 just to go through the process. You know who also had to pay $500? Dennis Quirk, for that ginormous building that he's got over there, same application cost. So if we do a fee schedule, I would love to be involved, because I could come up with ideas for tiering. Like Carol said, $100 per sign, but if they don't need the planning board, maybe it's 50. Or maybe the planning board goes up and the normal one is, I don't know right now, but it's something that we should look at. And in the fee schedule, we should put increased fines. Because, you know, when we increase the fines over there, we've been giving out $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 fines. They're done. They're stopping. They are not doing these things anymore. Word gets out and somebody gets a fine. The Chawas just got a $4,000 fine. That word's gonna get out. Oddly enough, that was based on an A-frame. They had an A-frame out on the sidewalk for 35 days. And Judge Stafford has been great lately with enforcement cases. And
Who was that again?
that was the Chawas.
The Chat House?
Chat House.
Oh,
Just on the same side as Capri, just down a couple
Okay.
stores
It's a
down.
blue building. They used to be,
Chavez is the owner?
yeah,
Okay,
used to own Taste of India.
yeah, okay,
They've been in
Um,
the village for years.
right.
Yeah.
We had a plethora of issues with them with signage at Taste of India. And when that place closed, then the issues moved across the street.
Said he was moving up to Sporks.
That's where the issues will move next.
Yeah, that's where the next issues will be.
A
So
little further drive for you. A little bit.
that covers everything that I had on my list. Other than the chickens law, I talked with Allison and Jose, and I think Ray about the chickens law. We have a couple of ideas. I do like looking at the count of chickens based on square footage. I
Yeah.
think that's a perfect way to address
For humane purposes.
how many, right? The occupancy of them. I think that's going in zoning. So I think a lot of these things could be tackled with one update. The last thing I did want to mention in terms of, there's two more things actually. When we do the fee schedule, we want to update chapter 99. By May 31st, you have your business license in. The day after that, it's doubled. 2 weeks after that, it's tripled. A month after that, it's quadrupled. It is the same businesses every year. Jim and I, how many times do we go out this year? 12?
No, I know, Deb was giving me updates.
It's getting silly and it's always the same people. It's always the same stuff. Once we actually give them a $500 business license fine, I think we will mitigate the issues that we continue to have. But Deb and Lori over the past 3 years have done phenomenally in minimizing that, because when it was before you, Jim, it was like me and Steph. And then there was another girl that was here after.
Kathy.
No, not Urseg. There was another girl.
Oh, she was here.
Oh,
couple months.
Yeah, she was.
Yes, that was pretty short
We
lived.
had like 30. I mean, we had like 30 a year that were like, we were going into the end of the summer without business license. There was a ton. So we have certainly minimized it, but I think some incentive there to get people to finish that. And then the last thing, this could be a future code, but scooters,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of scooters on the sidewalk now.
Electronics.
Electric
Electric scooters. We've got nothing in the code about it.
Mostly skateboards. is in the
Everything in the
code.
code is
Everything in the code is skateboards, right?
And it's so detailed in there, specific to every single park, specific to every sidewalk or every street, but it's all skateboards. If we could do minor amendments to address the motorized scooters and possibly even address bicycling on the sidewalks, because that's happening too.
Mhm.
Jim's got little ability to enforce when there's not something in the code, and we can't call the cops for something like that.
They won't, yeah, they'll
Just hit the gas.
just scoot away from you.
Well, yeah, but my question on this stop, and what they do is they walk it 30, 40 feet away. then they give me the finger, hop on it and zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are all code items. The last thing I wanted to say before we do a couple minutes and then we can be done. Events. I don't want to talk about events today, but I do want to ask this board, please keep Jim in the loop. When we are issuing event permits, when we are giving vendor licenses, when there are special approvals or considerations for things, he's got to know, because when we show up to a project or a site or a business and they're like, this was approved, not only do we look silly, it's a little bit of a waste of our time. And we find well over 50% of the things that are either done, decided upon, granted with the vendor licensing or business or event licensing, we are not aware of. And that's fine. I don't need to know about it because I'm not the one walking the streets and going and asking for vendor licenses or needing to know what exceptions there are. It's Jim. So if there's a process, like after the village board approves it, things go through Deb and she grants a permit or something. I don't know how it works, but if he can be in the loop somehow, I think it will minimize some of the confusion that's out there, as well as the wasted time when we have to go deal with something, if it's been blessed or you know, the tents during the events in Shepherd's this year. That was one, like, we were ready to write a couple people tickets for having tents out on non-sidewalk sales. Those types of things, if he's told immediately, then we'll know, don't even bother with it. You know, we're out there on a Friday in the summer, we're walking the beat, we're out there. And we've had on several occasions, we've had to apologize to people. You know, I think we were working on a water line over near the Blaze Park, and we sent a letter to Carson's asking what they were digging up, and it was a job that we were working on. So like, that's not an event thing, but it's helpful for him to know when we're out there doing enforcement. So
I've
we're
also
not-
had, to mitigate that, I've had Jim's running the letters by me, because I might know something that's going on. And so that's helped a lot too, so.
One of the
Shut
things,
you down on the weekend to ask you a question.
Right.
one of the things that we did to help with our DPW to make sure that they knew and were able to prepare for what's coming up with an event was we are now giving them copies. Once you guys approve it at the board meeting, we're giving them a copy of the actual event application, which basically states everything that's gonna happen. If you want a copy of those, we can also give you a copy of those. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be fine, and I'll just, break it down by the. month.
Right, I mean, there's not enough, there's not so many of them that you wouldn't be able to get through them, kind of thing.
And we're gonna have many less events this year than we had last year.
you could just, that would be great. And then you could just peruse them to see what in there is applicable. But the underlying issues tends to be in certain scenarios, something's not put on the application
Yeah.
or somebody did something.
A lot of the applications are to be determined, so
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be helpful for him.
It might help beyond what we're dealing
Yeah.
with now, but it may
Yeah.
not be the full picture.
Right.
Some of the detail, the lacking detail in some of the applications we receive is
Yeah,
a bit.
it's generally what we're missing detail on is the time.
Mhm.
Exactly that it's gonna start, or the, you know, what time they're gonna start
How
or
many
set up.
people, you know,
What vendors
Yeah.
are gonna be there?
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
almost none of them will know the
Yeah.
vendors until,
'cause the day
They
of the
can
vendors will
start-
flake out on them.
But he would have to know that, right? The vendors that.
Yeah,
are-
he goes around and checks the.
Right.
vendors.
Well,
So
as long as they
that's-
have a vendor permit.
Okay,
right,
so then he,
Yeah, no matter what, they should have a vendor permit.
Some of the vendor permits were issued to Village Hall, we did, the other ones were done to, Stephanie.
okay,
Mac and cheese. So she was handling the applications and taking the fees.
For the
But I
farmer's
checked with two
market,
People, see.
is that for the farmer's market?
yeah, that
farmer's
would
market
be,
and one event
And his
is-
other little things, yeah.
so there were two.
That's another pretty interesting thing that,
Vendor license.
So she was having her own little licensing
Little-
fee,
little
yeah,
side
her
hustle
own little
there.
fee system
Okay.
going.
yeah, they
She
should
was-
all
she
go through us.
fill out the application and turn it in that during the week.
Oh, okay.
But like on a Saturday or Sunday, I find people that are unlicensed with permits. I usually call the mayor or try to reach somebody to find out what the
It's
deal
fine.
is, rather than giving them a ticket. Right on the spot. Most of it's just an oversight.
Those oversight.
So the only thing we have left is allow us to pay people for either advertising, elderly sweater contest winner, the Shriners that we agreed to give them the $1,500 last week. A paving bid, which was paid for by the CHIPS money, which we have, and backhoe, year 1 of 5 lease, $18,000.
There's actually one more that I did not have as of this morning. I just got it this morning, which is for Jonathan Newell. He played at the Light Up the Village ceremony. The majority of this is for the Light Up the Village stuff. Everything that's in here is budgeted, so it's not additional. We didn't want to make people have to wait until the end of December to get paid. The
We also didn't
best
wanna pay them
paving
before
and the John Deere Financial, we can't wait.
Right, right.
These are,
So,
it's coming out of these, says payroll.
yeah, what that means is normally we pay during our audit, which is once a month, right before our board or at our board meeting. We're asking for authorization to pay it along with our payroll. There are certain bills that we pay at payroll every month, which are utility bills, Niagara Mohawk. We don't wait for those. We don't want to be assessed any
To light up
penalties.
the village expenses.
Mayor, I got one more topic.
It's not, no, they're still coming out of the funds that they're deemed to come out of. It's just that we don't want to wait till December 20th to cut the check. It's just run at the same time. It doesn't come out of our payroll. Yeah, so I need to,
So I need a motion to approve those payments.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Keith, you have something?
Yeah, going into that project that we've been working on, Julie and I, to replace the brine truck, through, a mini bid that Julie did. We had a lowest bid, which was Van Bortle, Ford out of Rochester. And, I've reviewed all the specs, everything looks good. I had one little addition, yesterday. So we'd like to get approval, to award this document to Van Bortle so they can start looking at building a truck for us.
I was gonna say, they don't have it in stock.
No, there's unfortunately, they think they'll have the truck available for construction early spring, and it could be a couple months after that. So it could, I don't know if we'll have it before May. I'm not sure. We'll manage somehow. But I'd like to approve for the PO for this.
What's the cost?
It's $15. We had budgeted 60 on that one.
It's for what?
It's the truck that we use for the watering during the summertime, and then this time of year we use it for the brine application. We've had nothing but major troubles with this vehicle, so we're gonna.
Can we not buy another diesel?
We're getting all gas.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting rid of all the diesels, except for the bigger
The big
trucks.
ones,
Yeah, and hopefully I'll have one more into our board meeting in December. That'll be the replacement. Or I'm sorry, no, we're not replacing that. Well, actually, no, we're gonna fix the one that we have in lieu of not getting another truck for a year. So we have the one for the water department, utility truck that we have budgeted through the water plant as well.
Mhm.
So we're good there.
But that one is already ordered, hasn't it?
no,
No, I thought, I was saying
Wait.
Ford had it and they said.
They were not part of OGS.
they couldn't bid it.
They
Okay.
couldn't bid it, unfortunately, and we learned that late in
Hard way.
the game here, unfortunately.
Yeah, nobody that we had sent out 2 mini bids.
Yeah.
Nobody had anything in stock. So we're on this one, we're low, obviously going to the lowest bidder.
Yeah,
We're most likely gonna award to the lowest bidder on the other one, pending your approval, but that will probably be the December meeting that will go over that.
Okay.
Because at this point, we can wait, we're getting the truck fixed.
So I need a motion to approve the $50,015.
So move.
Is there a second?
Wait a second.
Second by trustee Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay.
There was one more thing that wasn't on the agenda, but during the discussion of setting up this meeting, we talked about setting a date for to discuss events.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
You wanna do it before or
Do we
after the
have-
holidays?
I'll say, do we have a,
Another, and, a Monday.
'Cause we were talking like it was gonna be like on Monday.
A
We were
Monday.
talking like January though, I thought.
I don't think we talked about it, actually.
Maybe
It might be a
was-
good time to combine, the bid discussion at that meeting too.
Yeah, we can do that.
Mondays work for me, that time, as long as everyone's amenable to Monday. that's
Monday at
3:30.
3:30, which
Yeah.
date?
I would say,
I don't have a,
not, if we're doing December, obviously before the 25th. If you're doing January, please don't do it the 1st or the 8th would be my thing.
I'll say the 1st or the 8th, I'm not here.
Yeah, okay, so
Or January,
perfect.
I'll be on vacation.
I'm due January 10th, so, to me, it would be,
I go a week break in the 12th. It's
you-
my birth, or no, the 11th, I mean,
The 11th is,
it's to give it a week gap, and then we can be back.
On the 11th
Does that
of
work?
January, I
Or
would say, what's the date?
you're
December?
saying December?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get it over with.
December 11th?
December 11th, 3:30.
My daughter's birthday.
December 11th.
She just went back, she just
Yeah.
texted me, she made it back to Colorado.
Are you gonna be around?
Well, that's good.
I
Probably have a
just
meeting that
moved
night.
out To Beaver Creek.
Setting it up.
She lives in Denver.
Okay, we'll only have Dan for a half an hour of that meeting,
okay.
so, any
Yeah.
discussion involving Dan will have to be brief and first.
Back.
I also enjoy going to the town board meetings, so.
Is that it? Everybody,
Nope,
anybody got
motion to-
anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Got it.
Ordered.
Thank you, everybody.
Who,
Thanks,
who-
Dan.
who
Thank
said,
you.
Allison,
Allison.
Allison
Sure,
adjourned?
I
Yeah.
do.
And what time is it?
3:00. One of my kids walked home and one walked here.
Is there one here?
I think so. He's like, where are you?
This is closer. It's uphill though.
Both ways.
Into the wind.
Yeah.
Not from your side of the family, right?
Oh,
Definitely your wife's.
well, yeah, it's my wife's side.
Got this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody out of here.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah, I probably won't even use it again. Pretty crap. We're gonna do. Yeah, I probably do.
It's like a meeting rate thing.
No, I didn't turn it off. I didn't even use it.
Oh, that's fine.
And then the further, the bigger the spot, it just gets
Turn them off.
blurry.
Take a little bit of charge.
Yeah, they're not. too
I've been
much.
having to take them home. I had to take it home last night to download the stuff because we don't have any Wi-Fi.
I don't
Oh,
know.
that's right. We gotta get that fixed. When are we gonna?
I've already ordered it from Spectrum, and as soon as Spectrum says they'll be here, Daniel or Chris will come in to make sure we're all up.
Okay,
So we're just waiting for the IP stuff.
all right.
Oh, Julie, I have money for you.
Okay.
I'll walk upstairs with you.
Okay.
So that we're not carrying for the party.
Okay.
I gotta go up
Yeah, I'm
there.
gonna say I've got Jonathan here.